Chapter 45-25. However, ever since Bailey Shi's accident, he had been accompanying Bailey Yunyan in Shuiyan City. If he had returned to the family earlier and found out about this news, he would have been able to help when everyone was looking for Beichin. Things might not have developed to this point. Dugu's sighed. His handsome face could not hide his grief. This time, I went to the lower realm and finally found Beichin. I never thought that Beichin would have come to the upper realm before me. After Dugu explained the ins and outs of the matter clearly, Di Xiaofeng finally understood. However, his expression became even uglier. Di Kaiyuan has gone too far. The Di family has been very good to him for so many years. He actually did something worse than a beast. What did second brother do wrong? He's simply not human to be so cruel and merciless. Di Xiaofeng's face was full of anger, and his eyes were slightly red. It was hard to guard against a thief in the family. Back then, they had always thought that someone was behind this matter. However, they had always thought that their target was the Di family's opponent. They never thought that the biggest problem would be within the family. Kaiyuan already understood all of this before he died. That's why he sought death on his own. Dugu's sighed. Your mother was originally very happy when she heard that Beichin was coming back. Who would have thought that she would suffer such a blow now? Her mental state is very bad. You should go and see your mother first. Dugu's eyes were filled with grief and worry. It was not easy for the family to be reunited, but in the end, it was an illusion. They had rejoiced for nothing. Lin Yunqing had been very unhappy all these years because of this matter. She was depressed, and her health had gradually deteriorated. After this incident, she fell ill and could not recover. No matter how much he comforted her, it was useless. Looking at Lin Yunqing's increasingly pale face and increasingly thin body, his heart really ached. He had already invited the best doctor to take a look at her. Everyone said that it was a mental illness. If Lin Yunqing wanted to treat it, she had to figure it out herself. Otherwise, there was no cure. As soon as Di Xiaofeng entered the room, he saw Lin Yunqing's thin and sickly appearance. His expression changed, and he quickly walked to Lin Yunqing's side. Mother, what happened to you? Lin Yunqing's eyes lit up when she saw Di Xiaofeng return. Xiaofeng, you're back. Di Xiaofeng nodded. Mother, I've heard about what happened to Beichin. We're all very sad about this, but you have to take care of your body. Hearing that, tears began to roll down from the corners of Lin Yunqing's eyes again. Her red and swollen eyes had clearly been filled with tears the past few days. Your brother's life is so hard. He hasn't used anything from the Di family for so many years, but he has to sacrifice his life for the Di family. Why is that? Di Xiaofeng sat beside Lin Yunqing and couldn't hide the sadness on his face. We all owe second brother. It wasn't until Di Xiaofeng came out of the room that he understood how bad Lin Yunqing's condition was when Dugu said it was. If she continued to be so depressed, he was afraid that Lin Yunqing would. Mother's health was already very bad. Now it's even worse. Di Xiaofeng sighed. Although he tried his best to persuade, it was obviously of no use. Even he found it hard to accept, let alone mother who had always been thinking about second brother. Chapter 45-26. I've already invited the best doctors over, but they're still at their wits' end. Dugu frowned, his bright eyes filled with worry. Beichin was already in trouble. He couldn't let anything happen to Yunqing. However, Lin Yunqing couldn't even eat right now. If this continued, how could she live? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng thought of someone. Father, I met a godly doctor outside this time. I have a friend whose situation is similar to mother's. Something happened that she couldn't accept. She wanted to die, and all the doctors were helpless, but that godly doctor cured her. Now, that friend of mine is gradually getting better and doesn't want to die anymore. Di Xiaofeng was talking about Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's methods, he was extremely impressed. Bailey Hongzhuang also had a deep knot in her heart, but it was still untied by Bailey Hongzhuang. If he could find Bailey Hongzhuang, his mother's situation might improve. Oh, Dugu's eyes lit up. Who is it? Did she come this time? Di Xiaofeng shook his head. Although I met them, They still have their own matters to attend to, so they left first. Dujue's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. Then think of a way to find that godly doctor. Your mother's situation isn't optimistic. We can't let her continue like this. Yes, stay with your mother for this period of time. I'm going to Romance City. Dujue instructed. Romance City? Di Xiaofeng was stunned. Father, why are you going to Romance City? According to what Di Kaiyuan said before he died, your brother died in Romance City. Although it's unlikely that Di Kaiyuan would lie to us before he died, if I don't go there personally, I won't be satisfied. Dujue's eyes flashed with stubbornness and determination. Besides, even if it's true, I have to know the real situation at that time and find all the masterminds to avenge Beichun. Di Kaiyuan was indeed an important figure, but he wouldn't let go of anyone involved in this conspiracy. Father, you're right. At that time, everyone thought that Beichun couldn't be alive, but Beichun is still alive. This time, if we don't see it with our own eyes, we can't trust others like this. Di Xiaofeng nodded. However, I think it's better for you to stay here with Mother, and let me go to Romance City. Following Di Xiaofeng's voice, Di Xiaofeng's, Di Yujue, and Di Xiaofeng's? Di Xiaofeng nodded. The godly doctor I'm talking about happens to be in Romance City. If I can see her, I'll invite her to treat Mother. Di Yujue finally understood. What a coincidence. That's why I was very surprised when I heard Father mention Romance City. I also wanted to have a chance to see them again, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Di Yujue thought for a moment and nodded. Since you know them, then you can go to Romance City. However, you must investigate Beichun's situation. Father, don't worry, I'll definitely find out. Chapter 45-27. Father, I came back this time to report something to you. Di Xiaofeng's expression was complicated. This matter had always been on his mind. He didn't send a letter before because he was worried that the secret might be leaked. After all, the housekeeper they trusted so much had betrayed the family. No one knew if there were other traitors in the family. If this news was spread, it would be even worse for their situation. Looking at Di Xiaofeng's solemn expression, Di Yujue also frowned. What is it? When I was in Watercloud City, I was also ambushed by a group of inexplicable black-clothed people. They obviously identified me as their target and used a killing move to take my life. They didn't leave me any leeway. Fortunately, my strength was good, and I used all my strength to escape their pursuit. Later, I was saved by someone. The godly doctor I mentioned was the person I saved. If it weren't for them, I'm afraid I might not have been able to come back. Di Xiaofeng's words were not exaggerated at all. The forest was full of danger. If he had been in a coma, it wouldn't have been long before he would have been torn to pieces by monsters or skeletons. Therefore, in his eyes, both Situ and Miss Lan had saved his life. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, Di Yujue's gaze suddenly froze. A strong, murderous aura spread out from his body, filled with anger. Damn it, it's not enough to make a move on Beichun. Now, they want to make you their target. Di Xiaofeng didn't say much. In fact, his thoughts were the same as Di Yujue's. It was impossible for things to be so coincidental. It was obvious that someone had sent two groups of people. One group to attack Di Beichun, and the other to attack him. The goal was to get rid of the two brothers. These guys were really too vicious. They wanted to do things so decisively. Father, since the housekeeper died in front of you, why didn't he confess his accomplices? This was what Di Xiaofeng didn't understand the most. With such a hidden mastermind, they couldn't sleep or eat in peace. Kaiyuan suddenly committed suicide at that time, which was beyond our expectations. No one was able to stop him. I'm still investigating, but I already have a suspect in mind. Di Yujue's eyes darkened. Ever since he learned of this matter, he already had a vague suspect in his heart. It was just that no concrete evidence had been found so far. Who is it? Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but ask. Jun family. Di Yujue gritted his teeth as he said these two heavy words. Even though he didn't have any evidence, he felt that it couldn't be anyone else other than the Jun family. In his eyes, the Jun family had always been two-faced. They looked very friendly on the surface, but the things they did behind the scenes were far beyond one's imagination. The D family had been oppressed by the Jun family all these years, so they must have been extremely dissatisfied with the Jun family. Therefore, doing something that would harm the foundation of the D family would naturally be beneficial to them. As D Yujiu spoke, D Xiaofeng's expression changed, and he calmed down. "Father, your guess makes sense. You must be extra careful if you come across any members of the Jun family." Chapter 45:28. They usually act like they don't care, but we all know that this is just on the surface. D Yujiu thought for a moment and said, "When you go to Rome and city this time, let the great elder go with you and bring a few guards. With them by your side, I could be more at ease. We just found out about Kai Yuan's matter. I believe that they won't dare to make a move on you so quickly. We have been investigating closely during this period of time. I believe that they will have some fear. However, you still have to be careful when you go out. Father, don't worry. I will definitely not let anything happen to me. Tell me in detail about the situation when you were being hunted down. I will send people to investigate from this aspect." D Yujiu's face was ashen. These damned bastards had been extending their claws to his son. He only had 2 sons in total. Beichen was very likely to have fallen by now, and those damned bastards had begun to make a move on Xiaofeng. If he did not catch these bastards as soon as possible, how could he relieve the hatred in his heart? All right. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun understood the situation from Xiao Rojin, they did not hesitate any longer. After all, the most important thing for them now was to increase their strength. Otherwise, even if they knew who their opponent was, they would not be able to take revenge if they did not have enough strength. Therefore, they gathered Xiren and the others and went to the forest world to train together. To them, the forest world was not only a good place to train, but also a good place to cultivate. In that place with dense vitality, using spirit stones to cultivate, the speed was definitely not comparable to ordinary places. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying found out that it was no longer the ocean world, but the forest world, the two of them could not help but be surprised. The world inside can actually change? Shangwan Yingying found it hard to believe. When she first saw the ocean world, she was already shocked to the extreme. Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring was really too abnormal. It could actually appear in such a world on its own and allow them to cultivate. This was a good opportunity that ordinary people could not obtain. However, she didn't expect the scene inside to change. It was truly miraculous. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. The scenery inside will change as my strength increases, and so will the strength of the demonic beasts. I see. When Xiren immediately understood. If your strength has increased, but the strength of the demonic beasts inside is still the same as before, it will naturally be of no use to you. Exactly. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying had long known of the existence of this place, so it was fine. However, when Mo Yunjue and Ao Lingxiao saw the brand new world in front of them, they couldn't help but be stunned on the spot. Their hearts were in turmoil, and for a moment, they didn't know what to say. It was too shocking. This was completely beyond their imagination. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it at all. Mo Yunjue stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. He had always known that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation had increased so quickly because of her secret. In reality, every powerful cultivator had their own secret. However, he never thought that this secret would be so great. Chapter 45:29. If news of such a heaven-defying treasure were to spread, it would definitely be fought over by many forces. Needless to say, with Bailey Hongzhuang's current strength, she would not be able to protect this treasure. Therefore, she should not be willing to tell anyone. However, he did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun would trust him so much that they would even tell him such a big secret. In fact, ever since he met Di Beichun, he was the one who really needed help. On the contrary, he did not help them much. Even so, they still treated him as one of their own. Now, they were even telling him such a big secret. It was only at this moment that he understood how much trust they had in him. An indescribable feeling spread in his heart. Humans were like this. The more sincere the other party was to him, the more sincere he would want to be to them. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others trusted him so much, he could not let them down. Otherwise, he would be too much of a jerk. Ever since such a big incident happened in his family, he could not even trust his own brother. However, here, he gained such trust and friendship. To him, nothing was more important than this. Thank you for sharing this secret with me. I swear, I will not tell anyone about this. Otherwise, I will be struck by lightning and never reincarnated. A.O. Lingxiao's expression was serious, and his voice was sincere. These were his heartfelt words. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan had decided to let him come with them, which meant that they trusted him, he still had to explain his thoughts. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan looked at each other. It seemed that their judgment was not wrong. A.O. Lingxiao was indeed a trustworthy person. Lingxiao, we all trust you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Di Beichan also nodded. We are all good brothers. Originally, A.O. Lingxiao had always felt that he was an outsider in this group. However, at this moment, that feeling disappeared without a trace. It turned out that no one had ever treated him as an outsider. An indescribable sense of belonging spread in his heart. Thank you. When Xiren and the others couldn't help but chuckle. Although they did believe in A.O. Lingxiao, A.O. Lingxiao's reaction at this moment made them believe that their judgment was correct. Just as they were talking, the three beasties had already rushed over. Master, you're back. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. It seems that you've been enjoying your stay here these past few days. Xiaohei hurriedly shook her head. Master, if you're not here, how can we live comfortably? Bai Long could not help but shake his head speechlessly when he saw Xiaohei's bootlicking expression. Flattery will always work. As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but burst into laughter. Xiaohei turned her head speechlessly. Even if she was flattering him, this white dragon didn't have to expose her directly, right? This guy's way of doing things was really arrogant. He didn't give her any face at all. Unfortunately, Bai Long was not Xiao Xuanzi, who could be bullied at will. This guy's strength was strong, so Bai Long could only hide. Therefore, even though she felt wronged, she could only swallow her anger. After hearing Bai Long's words, Xiren and the others finally noticed Bai Long's existence. A trace of surprise appeared in their eyes. Chapter 45-30. The white dragon was now in human form. She was dressed in a white dress. Her face was outstanding, cute, and very beautiful. Although the white dragon had lived for many years, she was still very young when compared to the long lifespan of the dragon clan. She might even be very young. Shangwan Yingying and the others all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Before this, they had never heard of Bailey Hongzhuang being so familiar with a woman. Looking at everyone's blank faces, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but smile. Actually, she's not human. As soon as these words came out, everyone could not help but be stunned. Their eyes flashed with deep shock as they looked at the white dragon in bewilderment. It was really hard for them to imagine that such a beautiful woman was not human. Noticing everyone's gaze, the white dragon could not help but roll her eyes. I'm not human. I'm from the dragon clan. Xiren and the others breathed a sigh of relief, but then their eyes widened. Dragon clan? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Weren't you wondering why I suddenly disappeared when we were in the darkness ruins? I went to see her. At that time, she was trapped in the ruins. Later, she recognized me as her master, and we came out together. At this time, everyone understood. I didn't expect her to be from the dragon clan. Shangwan Yingying's face was full of surprise. Although I've heard of the legends of the dragon clan, I didn't expect to see a real dragon clan one day. Thinking of this, Shangwan Yingying could not help but feel excited. The dragon clan was not something that anyone could meet. Although the dragon clan was very powerful, they were very few in number. Most of them lived in places that humans could not reach, so it was very difficult to meet a dragon clan member. Hongzhuang, this dragon clan girl, can already transform into a human form. She must be very strong, right? Xiren slowly said. Although it was a question, he was very sure. Only when a monster beast reached a certain level of strength could they transform into a human form. None of the demonic beasts that could transform into human form were simple. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Back then, I was ambushed by a cultivator from the Crimson Moon sect. If the white dragon had not saved me and brought me to the upper realm, I would have died back then. If this kind of thing happened to someone else, everyone would feel that it was unbelievable. However, this kind of thing happened to Bailey Hongzhuang, so everyone was a lot calmer. After all, many unbelievable things had happened to Bailey Hongzhuang. Usually, a cultivator could only contract with one beast, but for Bailey Hongzhuang, this was not a problem at all. Hongzhuang, I didn't expect a dragon to become your contracted beast. You're really amazing. Shangguan Ying held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, her pretty face filled with pride. Although the owner of this matter was not her, she was very happy that her good friend could have such an opportunity. Ao Lingxiao did not know what to say at this moment. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang was a person with a great opportunity. Not only did she obtain such a heaven-defying divine weapon, but even the Dragon Clan recognized her as their master. Her future achievements would be limitless. The White Dragon saw that everyone was talking about this matter. Although it was one of the main characters, it felt that it had nothing to do with it. It immediately prepared to go back and continue to cultivate. Chapter 45-31. Now that she had finally arrived at a place with rich spiritual energy, she naturally had to seize the time to cultivate. Moreover, her memory was severely damaged. She only hoped that she could regain her memories as soon as possible. Otherwise, she would feel extremely uncomfortable. However, just as Bai Long was about to turn around and cultivate, Shangguan Yingying came to Bai Long's side. Shangguan Yingying had a flattering smile on her face. She rubbed her hands and looked like she wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Bai Long could not help but frown when he saw Shangguan Yingying's expression. He did not know why, but this expression gave him an ominous feeling. Bai Long, Shangguan Yingying slowly said, I've lived for so long and have only heard of the Dragon Clan and legends. I've never seen a real dragon god. As soon as she said that, the white dragon understood what she meant. Not only Shangguan Yingying, but when Xiren and the others also looked curious. They had always thought that the Dragon Clan was a legendary existence and had never seen their real appearance. If they had the chance, they would really like to see it. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen looked at each other. They should have expected this situation. Bai Long, if you don't mind, show your real body and let them see. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. If you don't want to, then forget it. They will have the chance to see it in the future. Bai Long felt helpless when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. She meant that even if she did not want to let them see her now, they would see her sooner or later. So why not just let them see her now? Although he could not help but complain in his heart, Bai Long still chose to agree. Bailey Hongzhuang was right. She was Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast and would naturally follow her. Sooner or later, everyone would see her real body. Moreover, there was nothing that they could not see. All right. In the next moment, Bai Long transformed into her real body and appeared in front of everyone. When the crowd looked at the incomparably huge and exquisite body in front of them, they all felt a sense of shock in their hearts. His true body was dozens of feet long. Standing before this huge dragon, they were simply too small. The dragon's scales reflected a tough and resplendent luster under the sunlight. The smooth lines were graceful and full of power, just like a work of art. The aura exuded by the Dragon Clan was extremely powerful. Even with their current cultivation, they felt a sense of suffocation when they got close. They all took a few steps back. This was the majesty of the Dragon Clan. So this is the Dragon Clan. How shocking! Shangguan Yingying exclaimed. That's right. When I heard about it in the past, I thought that it might be an exaggeration. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, I feel that what they said is not exaggerated at all. On the contrary, it might be too simple. Ao Lingxiao revealed an amazed expression. No wonder the dragon race had an irreplaceable status among monster beasts. Such monster beasts were indeed peak existences. A moment later, the white dragon returned to its human form. Although she was very satisfied with her image, she was still not used to being stared at like this by everyone. I'll go cultivate first. As she spoke, Bai Long had already moved to the side. She was worried that Shangguan Yingying would make some inexplicable request. Seeing this, Shangguan Yingying could not help but feel a little disappointed. She wanted to know more about the Dragon Clan. Chapter 45-32. When the beasts in the forest world sensed that the Qilin lion's aura had disappeared for many days, many of them became restless and wanted to go in and check it out. After all, the Qilin lion had occupied an extremely good territory. Not only did it have an abundance of vital energy, the environment was beautiful, and most importantly, it had the purple dream lotus. Normally, the Qilin lion would release its aura every once in a while. Hence, the other beasts did not dare to go near it. However, in recent days, there had been no sign of its aura. Furthermore, they all knew that the Qilin lion had been severely injured after a huge battle. Everyone was hoping that it had fallen. Just as some of the beasts were about to go near the Qilin lion's territory, a strong aura of the Dragon Clan could be felt. Instantly, all the beasts stopped in their tracks and trembled. The Qilin lion was already an overlord among them. Who would have thought that a Dragon Clan member would appear? Who would dare to go near it? Wouldn't that be courting death? In an instant, all the beasts who had the intention to go and retreated. They treated the Qilin lion's territory as a forbidden place. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others began to cultivate in seclusion in the forest world. The scenery was beautiful and the vital energy was dense. It was also very safe. It was much better than cultivating in the Green Dragon sect. If they wanted to find some opponents, all they had to do was to look for beasts to practice their skills. However, they obviously did not have such thoughts at the moment. After all, they had just arrived in the upper realm. Increasing their strength was the most important thing. After cultivating in seclusion for a month, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally came out of the Chaos Ring. It was good to cultivate in the forest world. However, they had not come out for so many days. It was inevitable that people would be suspicious. Hence, it was necessary for them to come out and walk around occasionally. Then we'll go to the guild first. When Xiren, Shangguan Yingying, Ao Lingxiao, and Mo Yunjua walked out together. Although they had already obtained the method of cultivation, there were still some things that they needed to do in the guild. You guys go ahead. After everyone left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. Both of them were amused. Di Beichun didn't have a dark guild, so he didn't need to go. As for Bailey Hongzhuang, although she had a Radiant Sacred Assembly, it wasn't a good place for her to go. She did have the identity card of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, but if she took it out, the people of the Radiant Sacred Assembly would recognize her. If she did not take out her identity card, the Holy Light Assembly would definitely make her go through the talent test again. After all, one's attributes could not be determined by words alone. With the Radiant Sacred Assembly's position in the Shengxian continent, there would definitely be many cultivators who wanted to call themselves members of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Therefore, it was obvious that their confirmation process would be very strict. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang had no way of entering. It's rare for us to come out. Let's go out for a walk. We'll find a place to sell these pills and exchange them for some spiritual stones. Then, we'll buy some high-grade spiritual herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile. She had refined a lot of dam before. Romance City was also a very big city. It could be said that everything was available here. Chapter 45-33. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun also nodded. Now that they were all trying their best to improve their cultivation, the consumption of cultivation resources could be said to be extremely fast. Although there were still some spirit stones left, there are not many left. It would not be long before all of them were used up. Exchanging them for more cultivation resources was also extremely important for them now. After making preparations, the two of them walked out of the Azure Dragon Gate together. Di Beichun, although there is also an auction in Rome and City, it is said that the process is quite complicated. Why don't we go directly to Danbao Pavilion to take a look? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Di Beichun. I heard Senior Brother Wan Yan say that this Danbao Pavilion is not bad, and they have connections with the auction. The price will not be bad. She was very familiar with the pills she took out this time. Although they were still in high demand, these pills might not be able to enter a large-scale auction based on the foundation of the upper realm. In that case, it would be better to sell them directly and save them the trouble. Okay, Deep Bachin replied. He had heard of Dambao Pavilion before. Its reputation in Rome and city could be said to be very good. The two of them walked all the way to Dambao Pavilion. Dambao Pavilion was located in the center of Rome and city and was very close to the Holy Light Assembly. When Bailey Hongzhuang went to the Holy Light Assembly, she often passed by Dambao Pavilion. The magnificent building revealed its aura and foundation. Anyone who could afford to open a shop like Dambao Pavilion must have a lot of confidence. After all, it was impossible to recruit a powerful alchemist without enough foundation. Not long after, the two of them arrived at Dambao Pavilion. However, as soon as they walked into Dambao Pavilion, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Bachan found that there were many acquaintances here. Wang Yanhan, Yi Haomiao, and Wang Yanling were all there, and the other person was Xiao Rojin. However, judging from the atmosphere, it did not seem to be very good. Senior brother Wang Yan. Bailey Hongzhuang called out softly. She noticed that Wang Yanhan's face was ashen, and his eyes were filled with anger and killing intent. The target of this anger was obviously Xiao Rojin. Looking at the situation, Wang Yanhan probably had a conflict with Xiao Rojin. Suddenly hearing this familiar voice, Wang Yanhan couldn't help but turn his head. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he was a little surprised. Junior sister Lan. Wang Yanhan's heart skipped a beat. He was used to calling her junior sister. At this moment, he almost blurted it out. Xiao Rojin's gaze also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. She couldn't help but think of the words that Wang Yanhan had almost blurted out. Small what? Little junior sister? Xiao Rojin immediately thought of this name. Wang Yanhan had always called Bailey Hongzhuang that way. Then he thought about the man and woman in front of him. If Bailey Hongzhuang were still alive, would they? Xiao Rojin's gaze kept sizing up Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Bachan, trying to find some clues. However, their expressions were normal, and she couldn't see where they had disguised themselves. This made her dispel her suspicions. Senior brother Wang Yan, what happened? Deep Bachan took a step forward and walked to Wang Yanhan's side. Hearing this, the anger in Wang Yanhan's heart surged again. He clenched his hands into fists and then weakly released them. He was a cultivator from the lower realm. He had no foundation and no spirit stones. What could he use to compete with Xiao Rojin? Chapter 45-34. Looking at Wang Yanhan's disappointed expression, Yi Haomiao couldn't take it lying down. Xiao Rojin, we were the ones who said we wanted to buy this divine light pill first. You're doing this on purpose. Yi Haomiao glared at Xiao Rojin. He hated this woman more and more. She looked gentle and pleasant on the surface, but she was more vicious than anyone else in her heart. However, Xiao Rojin didn't care about Yi Haomiao's angry words at all. On the contrary, the smile on her face became even more brilliant and proud. So what if I'm going against you on purpose? There's only one divine light pill here. The highest bidder gets it. You can't afford it. So don't tell me you won't let me buy it. You're blaming others because you can't afford it. If this gets out, people will laugh their heads off. Xiao Rojin chuckled. Anger and hatred flickered in the depths of her eyes. She had been unhappy with these guys for a long time. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang had joined a Raging Flame school because of them. They had already caused her a lot of trouble. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had died, Wang Yanhan actually made a scene with her. How hateful! After Wang Yanhan got drunk and caused trouble, she clearly felt that many people had linked Bailey Hongzhuang's death to her. One had to know that she had always been praised by everyone in the Raging Flame school. Now, her credibility was clearly much weaker than before. And the root of all this was Wang Yanhan and these annoying guys. She happened to pass by the Pill Treasure Pavilion today and saw Wang Yanhan and the others here. Naturally, she wanted to find a way to make them unhappy. She happened to see Wang Yanhan wanting to buy a divine light pill. If a cultivator wanted to break through from the Starlight Realm to the Starlight Realm, other than cultivating naturally, most cultivators needed the help of pills to advance. In Rome and City, Starlight Realm cultivators were the most common. Therefore, the Divine Light pill had always been in high demand. Even the Pill Treasure Pavilion only had one Divine Light pill left. In any case, there was no harm in buying it. She was naturally happy to make Wang Yanhan and the others unhappy. Wang Yanhan looked at Xiao Rojin angrily. In terms of wealth, he was indeed inferior to Xiao Rojin. To be honest, the amount of spiritual stones he received from the House of Flames wasn't even enough for his monthly cultivation. He had been very frugal these past few years, which was why he had saved up some spiritual stones to buy this cattail light pill. He had even borrowed a little from Yi Haomiao, which happened to be the price of the Pu Guang pill. Not to mention that Xiao Rojin was rich and imposing. He couldn't even take out one more spirit stone. "Let's go," Wang Yanhan said. Since he had no fate with this Pu Guang pill, he might as well leave as soon as possible so that he wouldn't be humiliated by Xiao Rojin here. Listening to the conversation between Yi Haomiao and Xiao Rojin, Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Haomiao finally understood that Xiao Rojin was taking advantage of her position to bully others and deliberately snatched Wang Yanhan's Pu Guang pill. Isn't it just a Pu Guang pill? What's the big deal? Why is this woman so proud of herself? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking sneer. In the past, she didn't see eye to eye with Xiao Rojin, so there was no need to mention it now. Xiao Rojin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, but didn't take her words to heart, saying the grapes are sour when you can't afford them. Why do I feel a sense of poverty? Chapter 45-35. Xiao Rojin, it's fine if you're targeting me, but don't bite everyone you see like a mad dog. Wang Yanhan looked at Xiao Rojin angrily. His bloodshot eyes made one's heart tremble. He was indeed very poor. Ever since he came to the upper realm, only he knew how hard he had worked to get to where he was today. However, Xiao Rojin's actions today had undoubtedly trampled on his dignity. Even if he was very poor, he was still a person with a backbone. Because of this matter, Xiao Rojin had mocked him, and he indeed could not refute it. However, if she mocked his friends because of this matter, he would not tolerate it. Xiao Rojin looked at Wang Yanhan's serious appearance and could not help but be stunned for a moment. However, when she came back to her senses, her ridicule did not decrease. She was a member of the Xiao family. Even if Wang Yanhan had some status in the Blazing Flames sect, he could not threaten her at all. This guy dared to do such a thing without caring about her face. Would she care about his self-esteem? She just wanted to ruthlessly trample on him. You cultivators from the lower realms have always been inferior. I really can't bear to look at your poor and destitute appearance. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced coldly at Xiao Rojin. You just bought a Pu Guang pill, and you've been showing off here for so long. Speaking of which, you should be the poor one, right? You have the nerve to show off here with such little things? What a joke. Just as Xiao Rojin was about to refute Bailey Hongzhuang, a white porcelain bottle suddenly appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Open your dog eyes and look carefully. This is a bottle of Pu Guang pills, not one. As Bailey Hongzhuang opened the bottle cap, Xiao Rojin also saw the situation in the porcelain bottle clearly. Sure enough, there were 12 Pu Guang pills. After seeing this scene, the eyes of the shopkeeper of the pill and treasure pavilion also shone brightly. Pu Guang pill. It really is a Pu Guang pill. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's movements did not stop there. Bottle after bottle of pills were taken out by her. Pu Guang pill, spirit recovery pill, Yuan Qing pill. In a short time, dozens of white porcelain bottles were taken out by Bailey Hongzhuang and placed on the counter. Look carefully. Cultivators from the lower realms like us really don't care about your cattail light pill at all. As for you, you've only bought a single pill, and you're already so arrogant. You should know very well who's the poor one here. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew that the reason why Xiao Rojin was so against Wang Yanhan was mostly because of them. She definitely could not watch her good friend endure such humiliation because of her. Since Xiao Rojin liked to humiliate people so much, then she would humiliate her back. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang took out the entire bottle of Pu Guang pills, Xiao Rojin's expression changed. Although she could afford the Pu Guangdong, she couldn't afford an entire bottle of Pu Guangdong. Even though she was a member of the Shao family, she was only a member of a branch family and had come to the Raging Flames sect to cultivate. In fact, she did not have many resources on hand. She was only slightly wealthier than ordinary cultivators. However, she never would have thought that this cultivator from the lower realms would take out so many pills in such a short time. This was too terrifying. At this moment, she had already forgotten how embarrassing her situation was. Her mind was filled with the feeling that everything in front of her could not be real. Chapter 45-36. At this moment, Wang Yanhan was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He had used up all his money in order to buy a cattail light pill. However, his little junior sister took out so many pills at once. How'd she do it? He could guarantee that none of the cultivators in the Raging Flames sect were as rich as Bailey Hongzhuang. There were so many pills, and each of them was a pill that they desperately needed. Because the sales were too tight, even if they had spirit stones, they often couldn't buy them on normal days. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang took out a whole bottle, and there were dozens of bottles in front of them. This was too shocking. The shopkeeper of the Danbao Pavilion was also dumbfounded at this moment. Their Danbao Pavilion's pills had always been relatively complete in Rome and City, but the number of pills each time could not be compared to those that Bailey Hongzhuang took out. Just the pills that Bailey Hongzhuang took out were enough to open a pill shop in Rome and City. Was this a cultivator from the lower world? Who would believe it? At this moment, he also felt that Xiao Rojin was showing off in front of an expert. She was simply asking for humiliation. Impossible. These medicinal pills of yours must be fake. Xiao Rojin was also angry at this moment. She didn't believe that a cultivator from the lower world would have such a foundation. However, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Xiao Rojin. The shopkeeper of the Danbao Pavilion is right here. Can't he tell whether it's real or fake? If you like to deceive yourself, then comfort yourself like this. You're a frog at the bottom of a well, but you think that others are the same. How ridiculous! After saying this coldly, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wang Yanhan and the others and said, "Senior brother Wang Yan, let's go. Don't pay attention to this kind of person. She will lower your standards." How could Yi Hao Miao and the others feel good at this moment? Previously, they couldn't refute Xiao Rojin's ridicule at all. They didn't expect the situation to turn around in the end. Looking at Xiao Rojin's ashen face and not knowing what to say, he felt a burst of joy. Even after walking out of the Danbao Pavilion, Wang Yanhan was still in shock. Yi Hao Miao, on the other hand, was a straightforward person. Previously, he had been so sullen that he was about to die. Now he was completely carefree. Noticing Deep Beichun beside Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but ask, "Beichun, why didn't you say anything in that situation just now?" Deep Beichun chuckled. "My wife can handle this kind of thing. I don't need to do anything." If it was any other matter, he might still be a little worried. However, when it came to pills, there was no need to worry at all. Competing with an outstanding alchemist to see who had more medicinal pills, wasn't this courting death? Yi Hao Miao couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Although it's just a simple sentence, I can still hear the hint of a public display of affection. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Hao Miao, if you feel lonely, why don't you find a Taoist companion early so that we can see your public display of affection? Just you wait. Sooner or later, there will be such a day," Yi Hao Miao said, unconvinced. After Wang Yanhan came back to his senses, he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, "Junior sister, how do you have so many medicinal pills?" Chapter 45-37. Wang Yanhan was stunned. "Aren't you an inscription master? These two are actually my identities." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. However, after listening to the conversation between Wang Yanhan and Bailey Hongzhuang, Wang Yanling couldn't help but frown. "Junior sister Bailey, are you still an inscription master? But I clearly remember that you are a doctor." Wang Yanhan and Yi Hao Miao exclaimed again. They were already confused. Now that they heard Wang Yanling's words, they were even more confused. In fact, they didn't cultivate with Bailey Hongzhuang in Penglai Palace. Only Wan Yinling understood Bailey Hongzhuang's situation the best. Di Baichen looked at Wan Yinhan and the others who were getting more and more confused. He couldn't help but smile playfully. His wife's ability was indeed too heaven-defying. Many cultivators wouldn't believe it if it was spread out. Ahem. Bailey Hongzhuang coughed dryly. She had forgotten that Wan Yinling knew this. She could only spread her hands helplessly. Actually, these three are all my identities. Wan Yinhan and the others stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang. After receiving her confirmation, they didn't know what to say anymore. They had already seen Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in inscription techniques. If it wasn't for her help, Wan Yinhan wouldn't have been able to improve his weapon and wouldn't have such a status in the Raging Flames sect. As for her alchemy skills, they didn't doubt it at all. No matter what kind of elixir Bailey Hongzhuang took out, it wasn't a low-grade elixir. On the contrary, there were very few alchemists who could refine such elixirs. They didn't know much about Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, but they didn't take it to heart. After all, an alchemist was also a doctor to a certain extent. It was just that there was a gap between them and a pure doctor. However, Wan Yinling thought differently. He knew how outstanding Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang, Penglai Palace's status in Penglai Island was raised again. Junior sister, I didn't expect you to be so talented at such a young age. I really admire you. Wan Yinhan cupped his hands. At this moment, he didn't know how to express his amazement and admiration. It was already amazing that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation could reach such a cultivation at such a young age. He didn't expect her to not only cultivate but also learn inscription techniques, alchemy, and even medical skills at the same time. Not only cultivate, but she also learned inscription techniques and alchemy and medicine at the same time. If SDS cultivations, Shihan Han's even more amazing skill. Was a Ninan test. Link T ordinary peoples. Hongzhuang, you've hidden your strength too deeply. I've never seen such a powerful cultivator like you. It's my honor to be your friend. A joyful smile appeared on Yi Hao Miao's face. He also felt proud that his friend was so powerful. Senior brother Wan Yin, do you need light elixir? Bailey Hongzhuang took out a white porcelain bottle and handed it to Wan Yinhan. This elixir is for you. It should be helpful to you. From Wan Yinhan's performance in Danbao Pavilion, it could be seen that he was embarrassingly short of money. It was really difficult for him to buy the elixirs he needed. Presumably, these spirit stones were saved. Chapter 45-38. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was an alchemist, and this pill was much easier for her to make, the value of the pill was still there. He couldn't accept it without doing anything. Eldest senior brother, with our relationship, why are you so polite? Little junior sister, this pill is very precious. I haven't been able to help you all this time. How can I accept your things? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang said helplessly, if you say so, my life is saved by you. Are these pills more valuable than my life? As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang directly stuffed the white porcelain bottle into Wan Yinhan's hand. These pills are nothing to me. I have as many as I want. Since we are brothers and sisters, we naturally have to help each other. If you are so polite with me, you are treating me as an outsider. At this time, Di Baichen also said, Senior brother Wan Yin, just accept it. When Hongzhuang refined the pills, she prepared some for you. Both he and Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that the Raging Flame School's resources were not enough to support Wan Yinhan's cultivation. If he wanted to break through, this pill was unavoidable. Although they hadn't known Wan Yinhan and the others for a long time, friendship was never measured by time. Seeing this, Wan Yinhan looked at the white porcelain bottle in his hand, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen, and said, then I'll accept it. He didn't say thank you because he knew that this was not something that could be expressed with just a word of thanks. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang and Wan Yinhan needed him in the future, he would definitely not refuse. Bailey Hongzhuang finally showed a satisfied smile. She immediately took out 2 identical white porcelain bottles and handed them to Yi Hao Miao and Wan Yinling. I prepared this for you before. I planned to give it to you when I asked you out tonight. I didn't expect to meet you so early. Xiao Rojin looked at the backs of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others as they left and felt a surge of anger rush to her head. She had lived for so long and had never been so humiliated that she couldn't say a word. However, she really didn't have the ability to refute. The pills that Bailey Hongzhuang took out made even her extremely envious. Normally, the family couldn't give her much resources. Even with the Raging Flame School's resources, she still didn't have much on hand. However, she didn't expect these cultivators from the lower realm to be even richer than her. So many medicinal pills. What kind of wealth was that? Xiao Rojin couldn't help but think that if she could snatch these pills, she was confident that she could break through to the Starlight Realm in a short period of time. She believed that her aptitude wasn't bad. She didn't have enough resources. Greed and covetousness continued to rise in Xiao Rojin's heart. She must snatch these pills back. Thinking of this, Xiao Rojin immediately took action. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 5 walked on the street. Wang Yanhan originally planned to buy pills. Now that he had the pills, he naturally didn't have anything else to do. As for Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun, they originally planned to sell pills at the Dambao Pavilion. However, after this incident, they didn't have a good impression of the Dambao Pavilion. If the Dambao Pavilion was really a shop with principles, it would naturally be first come, first served. However, they clearly didn't realize this, so they still decided to sell it at the auction. Chapter 45-39. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were about to enter the auction house, a familiar and sharp voice suddenly rang out behind them. "It's them. They stole my pills." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but turn around when they heard this. They saw Xiao Rojin quickly rushing over. Standing beside her were the disciples of the Raging Flame School who usually held her in high esteem. "Senior Sister Xiao, you're saying Wang Yanhan and the others stole your pills?" Xiao Rojin nodded. Her bright eyes were filled with anger and disgust. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun died, this Wang Yanhan has always been looking for trouble with me. Actually, his goal isn't to avenge his juniors at all. He just wants to get some benefits from me. A few days ago, I just received a lot of cultivation resources from the clan. I didn't expect Wang Yanhan to steal them. How hateful! Xiao Rojin's voice was extremely loud. At this moment, they were on a crowded street. In almost a short time, the surrounding pedestrians were all attracted over. As the only light attribute cultivator in the Raging Flame School, Xiao Rojin's reputation was quite resounding. When she spoke at this moment, many people recognized her. As for Wang Yanhan, there were also many cultivators who knew him. However, his reputation couldn't be compared to Xiao Rojin's. Xiao Rojin was a cultivator of the Xiao clan, while Wang Yanhan was only a cultivator from the lower realm. When Xiao Rojin said this, almost no one doubted her. Everyone was certain that this was definitely Wang Yanhan's doing. Cultivators from the lower realm don't have much background. I can understand that they lack cultivation resources. However, I didn't expect them to steal. What's so strange about that? In order to increase their cultivation, what wouldn't they do? Now that Xiao Rojin has exposed it, Wang Yanhan's reputation is probably ruined. It will be very difficult for him to establish himself in the Raging Flame School in the future. Everyone shook their heads. Stealing cultivation resources was a common occurrence in the upper realm. However, not only had Wang Yanhan been discovered, but he had also been pointed out by his fellow disciples on the spot. This meant that there was no turning back for this matter. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't expect that Xiao Rojin would come out and find such a funny excuse, but so many people believed it. Xiao Rojin, your ability to lie through your teeth is really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh. Because this woman coveted his medicinal pills, she actually splashed a basin of dirty water on them. However, that righteous indignation look was still impeccable. It was really admirable. I'm telling the truth. It's impossible for you guys from the lower realms to have so many pills. All the pills are cultivation resources given to me by my family. Xiao Rojin's expression did not change. She had already made up her mind. As long as she insisted, no matter how Wang Yanhan and the others tried to defend themselves, it would be useless. After all, in Rome and City, her trust was much stronger than Wang Yanhan and the others. Xiao Rojin, stop slandering me. Wang Yanhan's anger rose. He really didn't expect Xiao Rojin to be so despicable. You know very well who's slandering you. Xiao Rojin snorted coldly. Who doesn't know that you, Wang Yanhan, have always wanted to buy a divine light pill? However, you haven't been able to gather it for so long. You know that there's a divine light pill among the cultivation resources given to me by my family. So you have evil thoughts. Chapter 4540. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard that Xiao Rojin actually asked Wang Yanhan to cut off one of his arms, their faces all darkened. They didn't expect Xiao Rojin to be so vicious. Not only did she greedily want to take the cultivation resources from them, she even wanted to cripple Wang Yanhan's arm. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't intend to take Xiao Rojin's life before, then now she wanted to kill her. When Di Baichen noticed the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, he already understood her thoughts. In fact, his thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. This woman was so vicious. If Wang Yanhan continued to stay in the Raging Flame School, he would sooner or later suffer a great loss in Xiao Rojin's hands. Although there was originally a little room for reconciliation, it was obviously gone now. Xiao Rojin, you're too vicious. Wang Yanling looked at Xiao Rojin with disgust. He had just joined a Raging Flame School not long ago and knew that this woman was always finding trouble with his elder brother. However, he didn't expect this woman to be so excessive as to make such a request. I'm already being very tolerant. Xiao Rojin's eyes were full of disdain. If I directly tell this to Steward Wu, what kind of punishment do you think will you receive? Do you think you can still stay in the Raging Flame School? She wanted to drive Wang Yanhan and the others out so that they would have no place in Romance City. As long as Wang Yanhan was driven out by the Raging Flame School, no matter if it was the Azure Dragon School or other forces, they would not take her in. Since they had offended her, they definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Wang Yanhan and the others' hearts sank. If they couldn't explain this matter clearly, they were afraid that they really wouldn't be able to stay in the Raging Flame School. It was obvious that once this name was confirmed, what kind of eyes would people use to look at them in the future? Even if the Raging Flame School didn't drive them out, they couldn't continue to stay. Xiao Rojin's move was really vicious. Xiao Rojin, what right do you have to say that these pills are yours? Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. This woman was really full of drama. Do I need proof? Xiao Rojin retorted. I'm a cultivator of the Xiao family. Can you cultivators from the lower realm compare to me? As long as I stand here, I am the truth. Looking at Xiao Rojin's arrogant appearance, Yi Haomiao couldn't help but say, don't flatter yourself. Aren't you just a branch family member? You're always putting on airs all day long. Don't tell me you think you're the young miss of the main house. As soon as these words were spoken, Xiao Rojin's expression immediately darkened. Indeed, she had always been using the name of the Xiao family. Everyone actually knew that she was just a member of a branch family. However, she still felt very unhappy to be directly exposed like this. My wife is an alchemist, and these pills were refined by her. Do you think an alchemist is rich, or a cultivator from a branch family like you is rich? Di Baichen's eyes, which were as deep as the sea, flashed with a cold light. His deep voice was full of disgust, and the meaning of his words directly refuted everything Xiao Rojin had said before. Alchemist. When everyone heard that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually an alchemist, their expressions all changed. What did alchemists have the most? Naturally, it was pills. Chapter 4541. When Xiao Rojin heard that Bailey Hongzhuang was a pill refiner, her expression changed. Pill refiner? This woman from the lower realm was actually a pill refiner? She had never understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had so many pills. Until now, she finally understood. So this woman was actually a pill refiner. She could not believe that this woman from the lower realm had the identity of a pill refiner. One had to know that the higher one's cultivation, the fewer pill refiners there were, because most people had limited energy. Even in a place like the upper realm, As long as you had the identity of a pill refiner, you would be respected no matter where you were. Bailey Hongzhuang looked coldly at Xiao Rojin, then said to the surrounding cultivators, "This woman coveted my pills, so she found such an excuse to frame us. Indeed, we are cultivators from the lower realm and have no background. But I'm a pill refiner. Isn't it normal for me to have pills?" Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a cold light, and her voice was loud and clear. Since Xiao Rojin wanted to make a big deal out of this, she would let everyone see what kind of face this woman had. At this time, Yihao Miao also stood out and said, "Everyone, don't be deceived by this woman's appearance. She was only a cultivator of the Shao clan's branch family. Compared to ordinary cultivators, her usual cultivation resources were indeed much more abundant. However, so many healing pills were not something that she could take out. She only said that because she saw our medicinal pills and became greedy. That's why she said that. She's really too vicious." Xiao Rojin had already realized that things were not going well when Di Beichen revealed Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. If everyone believed her before, then after this incident, they believed Bailey Hongzhuang and the others even more. She could not let things continue like this. Otherwise, she would be the one who would find it difficult to establish herself in the Raging Flames sect in the future. Even with the Shao clan's identity, no one dared to say anything to her. But just their gazes were not something she could bear. "You're a pill refiner just because you say so? It's obvious that these pills are all in my name. It's just to cover up this point. That's why I made up such an excuse." Xiao Rojin's face was full of disdain. No matter what the situation was, she could only continue to act. Once she showed the slightest bit of guilt, she would lose. "Everyone, don't be deceived by them. This Wan Yinhan originally had enmity with me. Naturally, he took advantage of me and even poured dirty water on me." Seeing the two sides arguing, everyone was puzzled. For a moment, they didn't know who to believe. Bailey Hongzhuang found it funny. Am I not an alchemist? Or was this something that could be covered up by lying? Don't worry, I'll head directly to the Alchemist Guild very soon. At that time, we'll know who's telling the truth. Xiao Rojin had obviously made up her mind to not let Bailey Hongzhuang have the slightest possibility of evading. She immediately said, "You want to stall for time here? If I let you leave like this today, will you still stay in Roman City? I'm not a fool. Don't use such a boring trick to deceive me. This is simple. We just need to find a witness." Chapter 45-42. Who are you looking for as a witness? Xiao Rojin asked in dissatisfaction. "You are from the Raging Flame School, and we are from the Azure Dragon School. Naturally, we're looking for the stewards of both sides to be witnesses," Di Beichun said coldly. He had originally planned to take Xiao Rojin's life directly, but now he felt that since Xiao Rojin wanted to play, he would play with her. It would be too easy for this woman to die so easily. Hearing that Di Beichen wanted to call the stewards of both sides, Xiao Rojin's expression couldn't help but change. Once the stewards of both sides were present, and Bailey Hongzhuang really proved her identity as an alchemist, then her lie would be exposed. "What? You don't dare?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and her delicate face was filled with coldness. "If you admit that you are slandering us now, as long as you cripple both of your arms, we will forgive you." Bailey Hongzhuang's deep, dark eyes were filled with ridicule. After hearing this, everyone understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was mocking what Xiao Rojin had said before. After all, Xiao Rojin had asked Wan Yinhan to cut off one of his arms. "Your Azure Dragon School and our Raging Flame School have always had conflicts, so the steward is naturally on your side. Cut the crap and hand over my medicinal pills now." Seeing Xiao Rojin's constant refusal, everyone who didn't understand at first all understood now. No one was a fool. From Xiao Rojin's initial aggressiveness to her current evasiveness, the truth was already very obvious. I really didn't expect Xiao Rojin of the Raging Flame School to be so shameless. She kept saying that she looked down on the cultivators of the lower realm and coveted their medicinal pills. That's enough. As I said before, this kind of woman is the dirtiest. On the surface, she looks pure and lovely, but behind her back, who knows how vicious and vicious she is. From the looks of it, I feel that Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun of the Raging Flame School might have died in her scheme. Didn't this matter cause an uproar in the Raging Flame School before? Maybe Xiao Rojin wanted to take the opportunity to chase him out because Wang Yinhan exposed this matter. Just when the situation was one-sided, a figure suddenly appeared beside Xiao Rojin. Xiao Rojin, what happened? Xiao Rojin, who didn't know what to do, couldn't help but light up when she heard this familiar voice. Steward's son, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others were familiar with this person. There were several stewards in the House of Raging Flames. Steward Wu was the one who dealt with them the most, and Steward Sun was also one of the stewards. Manager Sun is usually very close to Xiao Rojin. I'm afraid he will side with Xiao Rojin now. Wang Yinhan's voice was heard by Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Her expression became very complicated. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' gazes changed slightly. They already had some considerations in their hearts. After seeing that Steward Sun had come, Xiao Rojin immediately gained confidence and hurriedly said, Steward Sun, this woman stole my medicinal pills, and Wang Yinhan is in cahoots with them. You must help me. As Xiao Rojin's voice fell, Steward Sun's gaze couldn't help but fall on Wang Yinhan and Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, he already had some understanding of this matter when he was outside. He also understood that this matter was probably fabricated out of thin air by Xiao Rojin, but so what? Chapter 45-43. Hurry up and take out Xiao Rojin's pills. Stealing at such a young age, this is intolerable. Manager Sun looked indignant, as if he couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but sigh when they saw this scene. Manager Sun really knew how to put on an act. His acting ability was even better than Xiao Rojin's. Manager Sun, this matter hasn't been concluded yet. How can you directly conclude that it's our fault? Yi Haomiao couldn't help but retort. Manager Sun's face turned cold when he saw that Yi Haomiao dared to refute him. Yi Haomiao, you have to be clear. You're from the Blazing Flame School, and now you're actually mingling with the Azure Dragon School. Are you thinking of betraying the Blazing Flame School? Steward Sun, these are two separate matters. How can you mix these matters together? Wang Yinhan frowned. Although he had already guessed that Manager Sun would side with Xiao Rojin, it was a bit too much to go to this extent. Are you saying that I'm being unfair now? Manager Sun raised his voice, the displeasure and anger in his eyes growing stronger. Wang Yinhan, don't think that you're so arrogant just because Manager Wu has taken a liking to you. How dare you challenge the authority of a manager? Why can't you tell right from wrong? Whatever you say is the truth. You don't care about the truth of this matter. Could it be that you can arbitrarily convict people just because you have a lot of power? Wang Yinhan couldn't hold it in anymore. He had never seen such an unreasonable manager. Manager Sun's expression was extremely ugly after being questioned by the disciples of the Blazing Flame School one after another. He originally thought that after he spoke, Wang Yinhan and the others wouldn't dare to refute him. After all, he was a manager. If they wanted to continue staying in the Blazing Flame School, they definitely wouldn't dare to offend him. However, he didn't expect the situation to be completely different for what he expected. The people of the Azure Dragon School hadn't even spoken yet, but he was already being questioned by his own disciples. I think you're in Chao's camp, but your hearts are elsewhere. You don't want to properly stay in the Blazing Flame School anymore. Manager Sun's voice was cold and full of threat. He secretly decided that when he returned this time, he would definitely punish Wang Yinhan and the others properly. If you don't want to stay, then don't. What's so rare about it? Yi Haomiao said coldly. Wang Yinhan also spoke up. I don't believe that there is no place for us in the upper realm. No matter what, we must know the truth today. Wang Yinhan was calm inside. He was indeed reluctant to leave the Scorching Flames sect. He had never thought about leaving before, but from the moment they offended Caretaker Sun, he understood that it was impossible for them to remain in the Scorching Flames sect. Even if they wanted to continue staying here, with Manager Sun's needle-like heart, he would definitely find trouble with them everywhere. Rather than leaving the House of Raging Flames in a sullen manner, he might as well leave now. At the very least, they would still be innocent. Following Wang Yanhan's words, Manager Sun's expression became extremely ugly. He was so angry that he laughed and said, "Good, very good. You've grown wings. Steward Sun is really impressive." A mocking laugh was heard, and another figure appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Noticing this figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but bow. Stewardly. The person who came was none other than Stewardly of the Azure Dragon School. Chapter 45-44. Steward Sun's heart skipped a beat when he saw Stewardly of the Azure Dragon clan appear. Originally, this matter should have been resolved immediately if he were to step in. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had suffered a loss, the pills had fallen into their hands. It was impossible for the Azure Dragon clan to get back at them. He didn't expect that Manager Lee would appear now. Things had become difficult to handle. However, the youths of your Blazing Flames sect are very courageous. I admire them. Steward Lee's gaze fell on Wang Yanhan and the other two. Look at the Blazing Flames sect. It's not a big deal. Since you know Situ, Chung, and the others, if you're interested, why don't you join our Azure Dragon clan? Hearing this, Wang Yanhan and the other two were shocked. They were still thinking about where to go after leaving the Blazing Flames sect. They did not expect the Azure Dragon clan to extend an olive branch to them. Thank you, Steward Lee. Seeing this, Steward Lee nodded in satisfaction. Only then did he see Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, "Lonnie Xuan, what happened?" "Steward Lee, Xiao Rojin discovered that I had many pills on me. She was greedy and wanted to take them away, so she found an excuse to say that I stole her pills. In fact, these pills were all refined by me. After Xiao Rojin could not win against me, their steward son began to throw his weight around and wanted to forcibly take away my cultivation resources." Steward Lee nodded in understanding. "Steward son, you should have heard it clearly. These pills were refined by the disciples of the Azure Dragon clan. If you want to label the disciples of the Azure Dragon clan as thieves, you must at least show enough evidence. Otherwise, I will not agree." Steward Lee's aura suddenly exploded. This matter did not only concern the dignity of Bailey Hongzhuang and Lonnie Xuan, but also the face of the Azure Dragon clan. He would not allow the Blazing Flames sect to be labeled as such. As soon as Steward Lee appeared, Steward Sun had already realized that the matter was not easy to resolve. Now that he saw the other party's aggressive manner, he could not help but frown. He had long known that everything Xiao Rojin said was fabricated, so naturally, there was no evidence. If you can't produce any evidence, you should know how to deal with this matter. Manager Lee's voice was ice cold as he said. Manager Sun's expression was complicated. He couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin with some resentment in his heart. This guy was really too stupid. The other party was clearly an alchemist, yet she actually came up with such a demonic reason. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't believe it. A smile appeared on the faces of Yi Haomiao and the others. Fortunately, Manager Lee had appeared. The situation had changed once again. They wanted to see how Xiao Rojin would end this. "Steward Lee, Xiao Rojin not only slandered us before, but also wanted Wang Yanhan's arm." Bailey Hongzhuang quietly reminded him. Since Xiao Rojin was so vicious, she must pay the same price. Manager Lee naturally understood the meaning behind Bailey Hongzhuang's words at this moment. His gaze then fell on Xiao Rojin, and his voice was cold and unquestionable. "Since this matter arose because of you, then it will be resolved from you. As long as you cripple both your arms and admit that everything is your slander, I will let this matter go." As soon as these words were spoken, Xiao Rojin's face immediately turned pale. Chapter 45-45. Thinking of this, Xiao Rojin hurriedly looked at Steward Sunday. At this moment, Steward Sun was her only hope. Steward Sun naturally felt Xiao Rojin's gaze. However, Steward Lee's status was not inferior to his. Previously, when Steward Lee was not here, it was not a big deal for him to teach the Azure Dragon Gate disciple a lesson. However, now that Steward Lee was here and the Azure Dragon Gate was in the right, he naturally could not say anything more. Otherwise, if they were to get serious, the Azure Dragon Gate would not be afraid of the Blazing Flames Gate at all. Moreover, if it reached that point, the Blazing Flames gate might even give up on him. Noticing that Steward Sun did not say a word, Xiao Rojin's face turned pale. She understood that Steward Sun had chosen to compromise, break her own arms. At this moment, Xiao Rojin really wished that none of this had happened. If she had known this would happen, she would not have been so greedy. Now that she had gone for wool and come home shorn, it was really sad. Hurry up, I don't have time to wait for you. Steward Li's voice was extremely cold. If this was the Blazing Flames Gate's own matter, it would be fine. However, they wanted to bully their Azure Dragon Gate disciple. They were simply dreaming. Xiao Rojin's eyes were slightly red. She had never suffered such grievances in her life. However, in the current situation, she had no other choice. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had cold expressions. All of this was Xiao Rojin's own doing. She deserved to be punished like this. Just as Xiao Rojin was about to harden her heart and break her own arms, a voice sounded again. Steward Li, Xiao Rojin is a member of the Xiao clan. Aren't you not giving the Xiao clan face by doing this? Suddenly hearing this voice, Steward Li could not help but frown. He did not understand who was so blind to come looking for trouble at this time. However, when Steward Li saw who it was, his expression changed. If it was an ordinary person, he could completely ignore it. However, it was the vice president of the Holy Assembly, so he had to consider it. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also noticed Gong Tianfeng. I didn't expect Gong Tianfeng to be so nice to Xiao Rojin. She's willing to stand up for Xiao Rojin at this time. Yi Haomiao felt a little strange. Logically speaking, Gong Tianfeng was an extremely selfish woman. She should have chosen to protect herself at a time like this. Just buying people's hearts. I just don't know who the real fox is, Wan Yanling mocked. President Gong, this is a matter between my Azure Dragon School and the Raging Flame School. Are you sure you want to get involved? Manager Li's face darkened. Even though Gong Tianfeng had a lot of influence in Rome and City, he could not give in on this matter. If the cultivators of the Azure Dragon clan were bullied by others, and he, as the steward, could not get back at them, then what cultivators would be willing to join the Azure Dragon clan in the future? Seeing Manager Li being so serious, Zhang Yunfeng frowned slightly. She originally wanted Xiao Rojin to owe her a favor. After all, it was only a matter of a few words. However, if Manager Li was so insistent, things would become a little complicated. Manager Li, actually, as long as she's willing to apologize, this matter will be over. If things get out of hand, the impact won't be too good. Gong Tianfeng's tone softened a little. She did not want to offend the Azure Dragon sect for Xiao Rojin. This was undoubtedly not worth the loss. Chapter 45-46. As soon as Steward Li finished speaking, all the cultivators present immediately understood what he meant. In fact, everyone also felt that what Gong Tianfeng said at this moment was extremely unfair. From Xiao Rojin's aggressive appearance before, if she had succeeded in slandering them, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would definitely have to bear the consequences. It was definitely not something that could be settled with just an apology. Now that they had gone for wool and come home shorn, they only needed an apology to end it. This price was too easy. Gong Tianfeng's expression was a little difficult to speak, and she was even a little angry out of humiliation. Her words just now were already softening, but Manager Li had no intention of letting her step down at all. This made her extremely unhappy. As the vice president of the Holy Assembly, she was usually respected by everyone. Most people would give her face, but Manager Li did not care about this at all. Manager Li, Xiao Rojin is not only a disciple of the Blazing Flame School, but also a member of our Holy Assembly. You mean you want to protect her? Manager Li narrowed his eyes. He did not expect Gong Tianfeng to say things to this extent. If these two people insisted on stopping them, things would be a little difficult. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Manager Li standing in front of her and was secretly surprised. She did not expect Manager Li to be so protective of them. In fact, ever since she joined the Azure Dragon School, she did not have any sense of belonging to it. She only felt that it was a temporary shelter. However, when she saw Manager Li arguing for their sake, she changed her mind. This was a very humane force. At least this manager was not snobbish at all. He was far better than those selfish managers. Seeing that Manager Li did not back down, Gong Tianfeng's anger also rose. She immediately said angrily, "As long as I'm here today, don't even think about touching a single hair on Xiao Rojin." Xiao Rojin, who was originally helpless, suddenly had a joyful look in her eyes. As long as Gong Tianfeng protected her, she would definitely be fine. "I'm a member of the Xiao family. If you treat me like this, the Xiao family will not let you off." The atmosphere suddenly froze. Both sides were in a deadlock. Manager Li looked coldly at Manager Sun and Gong Tianfeng in front of him. With his strength alone, he was afraid that he would not be able to defeat these two people. Moreover, he still had to take care of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If that was the case, it would be difficult to get justice today. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others naturally understood that the situation in front of them was very unfavorable for Manager Li. If they were previously filled with anger towards Xiao Rojin, after seeing Manager Li doing this for them, the anger in their hearts had dissipated a lot. Justice was in everyone's heart. Now that things had reached this point, everyone already knew the truth. I've seen shameless people before, but I've never seen both the old and the young so shameless. Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. It's really an eye-opener to cover up to this extent. Manager Li, let's go back. They clearly intend to be shameless to the end today. However, anyone with a discerning eye will understand what's going on. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were merciless, every word piercing the heart. Xiao Rojin and Gong Tianfeng's faces were ugly to the extreme, but in this case, even if they refuted, it was pale and powerless, so they simply stopped talking. Chapter 45-47. Of course, we can't just let this matter go. Another loud and confident voice sounded. Hearing this voice, everyone couldn't help but turn to look in the direction of the voice. No one expected that this matter would have so many twists and turns. One person after another appeared. They didn't expect that after the vice president of the Holy Assembly, there would still be someone who dared to stand up. Was he not afraid of offending the Holy Assembly? In their line of sight, a young man slowly walked over. His handsome face was like an exquisite work of the heavens. He was elegant and unparalleled in his handsomeness. After seeing the man, many women around them had deep admiration in their eyes. Such a man was enough to make people fall in love at first sight. After seeing the man, Xiao Rojin's expression changed again and again. Such a handsome man, other than Di Beichun, whom she had met before, no one else could compare to him. However, Di Beichun was a cultivator from the lower realm, and this man had a dignified appearance and extraordinary temperament. Obviously, his background wasn't simple either. Immediately, she couldn't help but reach out to stroke her hair. She almost forgot what was going on in front of her. When Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun, and Wan Yinling saw the man, they couldn't help but be stunned. None of them expected to see him again here. This man was none other than Di Xiaofeng. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Wan Yinling's gaze, Di Xiaofeng quietly gave them a look. Di Xiaofeng was also very surprised. He originally thought that after coming to Romance City, he didn't know when he would be able to find Situ and Wan Yinling. After all, Romance City wasn't small. If Situ and Wan Yinling lived here very low-key, it would take some time to find them. What worried him the most was that if the two left Romance City, he didn't know when he would be able to find them. However, he didn't expect to see them as soon as he arrived in Romance City. It was really too coincidental. However, judging from the situation in front of him, they seemed to be in trouble. "Who are you?" Gong Tianfeng looked at Di Xiaofeng gloomily. She had never seen this person before, but she was sure that this person was definitely not from Romance City. However, from the aura that this person exuded, she felt that he was not an ordinary person. As the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, she had seen many people over the years. She had a good eye for people, but why was this person helping these people from the Azure Dragon sect? "It doesn't matter who I am, but it's obvious that you're in the wrong. Yet you're doing whatever you want just because you're from the Holy Light Assembly. Isn't that too embarrassing?" Di Xiaofeng had also heard some of the content before. When he saw Gong Tianfeng being unreasonable after losing to Manager Li, he also felt speechless. How can such a person become the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly? The Radiant Sacred Assembly is becoming more and more depraved. How dare you say that about the Holy Assembly? You must be tired of living. Gong Tianfeng's expression changed. She would never tolerate anyone who spoke ill of the Holy Assembly. Listen up, Situ and the others are my friends. Let that woman break her own arms right now, and this matter will be over. Otherwise, none of you three will be able to leave today. Di Xiaofeng's voice was cold. How dare you bully my friend? You're courting death. Chapter 45-48. Thinking of this, Manager Li also nodded at Di Xiaofeng. He felt a little strange. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were cultivators who just came from the lower realm. How could they know someone with such an extraordinary identity? However, on second thought, Bailey Hongzhuang had the identity of an alchemist, so it was not strange. Di Xiaofeng also nodded at Manager Li. Then, his gaze fell on Gong Tianfeng and Xiao Rojin again. I also know many people from the Xiao family. How come I've never seen you before? If you use the name of the Xiao family to bully others, you should know the consequences if the Xiao family finds out. Di Xiaofeng's expression was indifferent. His gaze inadvertently swept across Xiao Rojin's face. The Di family and the Xiao family were familiar with each other. He had also gone to the Xiao family many times. Naturally, he could be sure that this person was not from the Xiao family at all. At least, she was not a direct descendant of the Xiao family. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiao Rojin's expression suddenly changed. You know someone from the main family? If Xiao Rojin could still maintain her calm before, she could not do so now. She knew very well that once this matter was spread back, she would definitely die. Of course. I'll cripple my arms immediately. Can you not tell the main family? Xiao Rojin hurriedly said. She didn't doubt that this person was lying, because he was too confident. Almost without hesitation, Xiao Rojin raised her hand and crippled her own arm. The intense pain caused her to groan, but she still endured it. If her arms were crippled, she would be able to recover after a period of time. If she lost her life, then there was no other way. Wang Yanhan and the others were shocked when they saw this scene. They did not expect Xiao Rojin to be so straightforward when she was unwilling before. Seeing her being angry but not daring to say anything, they felt a wave of comfort in their hearts. She deserved it. However, a thought appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Previously, they had guessed whether Di Xiaofeng was related to the Di family, but Di Xiaofeng did not admit it. But now, Di Xiaofeng said that he knew people from the Xiao clan. If this was true, didn't that mean that Di Xiaofeng was from the Di clan? Otherwise, Di Xiaofeng wouldn't have had the chance to come into contact with the Xiao family. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. She found that Di Beichen was also deep in thought. It seemed that they were thinking of the same problem. When Gong Tianfeng saw that Xiao Rojin had crippled her arm without saying a word, her expression became extremely ugly. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have helped Xiao Rojin. Now, not only was it useless, but she had also caused trouble. Since Xiao Rojin has already suffered greatly, let's just forget about it, Gong Tianfeng said. She did not want to stay here any longer. She just wanted to leave as soon as possible. Di Xiaofeng naturally wouldn't let Gong Tianfeng do as she wished. As the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly, the most important thing is to be fair and just. Since you're so unfair, I think you should step down from your position as the vice president. Otherwise, you'll look even worse. When he said this, Gong Tianfeng's expression became extremely ugly. Who exactly are you? Why do you have to make me step down? Chapter 45-49. I'm from the Di family. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with a cold light. His voice was calm and indifferent. Following Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiao Rojin, who was still guessing in her heart, suddenly trembled and fear appeared in her eyes. Others might not know about the Di family, because the people in Rome and city simply could not come into contact with such an existence. However, as a member of the Xiao family's branch family, she had long heard of the Di family. The Di family was an existence that was not any weaker than the Xiao family. She had never thought that the man in front of her was actually a direct descendant of the Di family. In comparison, A person like him was like an ant in front of him. Gong Tianfeng frowned. Although she was the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly in Rome and City, she simply could not come into contact with those huge families with her status. However, when she noticed Xiao Rojin's pale face, she knew that she had kicked an iron plate this time. Even if you're from the D family, you can't control our Radiant Sacred Assembly, Gong Tianfeng hurriedly said. She had worked so hard for so many years to obtain her current status. She definitely could not lose everything like this. Coincidentally, I happen to know the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Do you think it's better for you to step down yourself, or for me to tell him and let him step in? Di Xiaofeng looked at Gong Tianfeng indifferently. He felt that there was no need to even make a move against this kind of person. Once these words came out, Gong Tianfeng's body trembled. Her entire body could not help but tremble. No, you can't do this. Zhuo Hongyan was originally cultivating in the Radiant Sacred Assembly when he was suddenly disturbed. This made him very unhappy. However, after hearing the ins and outs of the matter, he did not care about getting angry and immediately rushed to the location of the incident. Young Master D, I'm the president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly in Rome and City, Zhuo Hongyan. Zhuo Hongyan's face was filled with smiles. Although he was only the president of the division, he already had some understanding of some of the top forces in the Shengxian continent. The D family was one of them. Not only that, the D family's relationship with the Radiant Sacred Assembly could be said to be extremely good. However, he didn't expect that a direct descendant of the D family would come to a small place like Rome and City. The most important thing was that Gong Tianfeng had a conflict with them. Wasn't she courting death? Since the president is here, you should know what to do, right? Di Xiaofeng said calmly. Zhuo Hongyan quickly nodded. Of course. In fact, I've already punished her since she stopped a talented cultivator from joining the Holy Assembly. I didn't expect her to be so stubborn. I'll kick her out of the Holy Assembly now. Zhuo Hongyan turned to look at Gong Tianfeng. From now on, you have nothing to do with the Holy Assembly. Don't use the name of the Holy Assembly when you go out in the future. Otherwise, I'll be the first to punish you if I find out. Gong Tianfeng's face was deathly pale. She had never thought that things would suddenly turn out like this. If she left the Holy Light Assembly, where should she go? She had offended quite a few people over the years. Once she lost her status, she could imagine the consequences just by thinking about it. Chapter 45-50. At this time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beicheng were thinking about what Di Xiaofeng said. He was from the D family. Ever since they came to the upper realm, they had always hoped to go to the D family as soon as possible because Di Beicheng was a disciple of the D family. However, Di Xiaofeng was actually from the D family. He didn't go anywhere, but came to Rome and City. This couldn't be a coincidence. Di Beicheng, Xiaofeng, is from the D family. Could he have been sent by the D family to find you? Bailey Hongzhuang transmitted. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were complicated. The situation is still unclear. Let's not expose ourselves for the time being. He believed in Di Xiaofeng's character, but ever since the matter of being chased, he had to be careful. Someone didn't want him to return to the D family, so they did everything possible to stop him. Before figuring out whether the other party was friend or foe, he couldn't expose his identity. In fact, not to mention that Di Xiaofeng's strength wasn't simple. The middle-aged man beside him hadn't said a word since he came. However, none of them could ignore that this person was definitely a true expert. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was clear. Do you remember Xiaofeng saying that he had been hunted down before? Could it be that the people chasing after you and him are the same people? She still remembered the scene when she saved Di Xiaofeng. At that time, his injuries were very serious. If they hadn't happened to meet them, it would have been very dangerous in the dark forest. Di Beicheng nodded. He also thought of this point. In fact, he instinctively didn't want to think that Di Xiaofeng was someone who didn't want him to go back. When Zhuo Hongyan made the decision, Gong Tianfeng knew that she was powerless to reverse the situation. She immediately looked coldly at Xiao Rojin. If it wasn't for helping her, how could she be reduced to such a situation? Noticing Gong Tianfeng's vicious gaze, Xiao Rojin couldn't help but shiver. However, She lowered her head and didn't say a word. By the way, since you're all here, I'll ask you about something. Di Xiaofeng looked at Zhuo Hongyan, manager's son, and managerly in front of him. He already knew that these guys were from the more outstanding forces in Rome and City. At this moment, he didn't even care about communicating with Di Beichun and the others. He was more eager to know his brother's situation. Although they all knew that the possibility of Di Beichun being alive was very small, he still had a trace of hope. Young Master Di, please speak. We will definitely tell you everything we know. Di Xiaofeng nodded, and Xiao Rojin, they. Di Xiaofeng's gaze fell on Zhuo Hongyan and the others. Seeing the sudden change in their expressions, he understood that these people in front of him all knew. Tell me in detail. Di Xiaofeng's voice was deep and filled with endless majesty. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Yi Haomiao and Wan Yinhan were secretly shocked. Their eyes were filled with doubt. Di Beichun immediately gave them a look. Only then did they suppress the doubt in their hearts. Chapter 45-51. Not only that Bailey Hongzhuang is also a member of our Radiant Sacred Assembly. At this time, Manager's son also cupped his hands and said, "That's right, they were indeed members of our Raging Flames sect." Then where are they now? Di Xiaofeng quickly asked. May I ask what is your relationship with them? Zhuo Hongyan probed. When Zhuo Hongyan raised this question, everyone's eyes fell on Di Xiaofeng. Both of them had the surname Di, so everyone couldn't help but have some guesses in their hearts. Di Beichun is my younger brother. Di Xiaofeng didn't hide it at all. As soon as these words came out, everyone present felt as if they had been hit by a heavy blow. They looked at Di Xiaofeng in astonishment and couldn't recover for a moment. Xiao Rojin looked at Di Xiaofeng in a daze. Stormy waves were already surging in her heart. Weren't Di Beichun and the others cultivators from the lower realm? How could they be members of the Di family? However, looking at Di Xiaofeng's serious appearance, it was obvious that what he said couldn't be a lie. At this time, Xiao Rojin was about to die from regret. If she had known earlier, she definitely wouldn't have gone against Di Beichun and the others. Now, she could almost imagine what kind of anger she would have to endure later. Originally, Gong Tianfeng wanted to settle the score with Xiao Rojin, but at this moment she no longer had this thought. She quietly stepped back and gradually retreated into the crowd. Losing the position of vice president was already very tragic, but compared to losing her life, this was nothing. Tell me, what happened to Beichun and the others? Di Xiaofeng's gaze locked on Zhuo Hongyan and Manager Sunday. These two definitely knew the ins and outs of all this. Young Master Di, although Bailey Hongzhuang is a member of our Radiant Sacred Assembly, I really don't know what happened to her later. When she joined the Radiant Sacred Assembly, I wasn't in Rome and City. Although Gong Tianfeng obstructed her a lot, I stopped Gong Tianfeng after I returned. Previously, I said that I would punish Gong Tianfeng because of this matter. Later on, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the Raging Flame School, so I don't know what happened. Zhuo Hongyan bluntly told him everything he knew. When Steward's son saw that Zhuo Hongyan had pushed all the questions to him, he secretly cursed the old fox in his heart. You said that Gong Tianfeng was looking for trouble with my sister-in-law? Di Xiaofeng's brows were tightly knitted. He had long felt that woman was an eyesore, but he didn't expect her to bully his sister-in-law before. Zhuo Hongyan nodded. Indeed, many people in Rome and City know about this. At this moment, Manager Li stepped forward and said, Young Master Di, President Zhuo is speaking the truth. Gong Tianfeng. Di Xiaofeng's face was gloomy, but Gong Tianfeng was nowhere to be seen. While they were talking, Gong Tianfeng realized that things were not going well and quickly ran away. Grand Elder. Di Xiaofeng turned his head and looked at the man behind him. The man immediately cupped his fist and said, Young Master, don't worry. She won't be able to escape. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone found that the man suddenly disappeared from their sight. Speak. Di Xiaofeng's gaze turned to Manager Sun, his attitude firm. Manager Sun's body trembled slightly, and even his voice was trembling. They died in the training, but this matter wasn't my responsibility, so I'm not very clear about the specific situation. Chapter 45:52. Although he already knew that this was the most likely result before he came, when he really heard the answer, he still couldn't help but feel sad. His brother's life was really too hard. He finally returned to the upper realm, but he couldn't return to the family. If only he was in the family at that time. If he could come to Rome and city earlier, maybe this wouldn't be the case. Tell me the details. Di Xiaofeng said in a deep voice. I heard that they were suddenly attacked by black-clothed men when they were training in the demonic dragon abyss. Manager Sun was drenched in cold sweat. He really didn't know much about this situation because Wu Wenfeng was originally in charge of this. However, now that Di Xiaofeng asked him, he had to answer. While thinking, Manager Sun's gaze fell on Xiao Rojin, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Young Master Di, the person who was training with Di Beiqian at that time, was Xiao Rojin. Why don't you ask her? When Manager Sun proposed to let Di Xiaofeng ask Xiao Rojin, the cultivators present couldn't help but sneer. Could it be that Manager Sun is scared out of his wits? Isn't the reason why Di Beiqian and Bailey Hongzhuang are in trouble because of Xiao Rojin? Xiao Rojin previously treated Di Beiqian and Bailey Hongzhuang as cultivators from the lower realm and targeted them everywhere. I didn't expect them to have such an extraordinary background. I'm afraid she's going to be miserable now. When I first saw Di Beiqian, I felt that his identity was extraordinary. I didn't expect him to have such an extraordinary background. At the same time, Xiao Rojin was already regretting it to the extreme. She was really going crazy. She couldn't understand why Di Beiqian had such a deep background. So why did he pretend to be a cultivator from the lower realm in front of her? If he had said such an identity earlier, she definitely wouldn't have looked for trouble. But now that things had fallen into such a situation, she was afraid that it was useless no matter what she said. Di Xiaofeng also heard the conversation of the surrounding cultivators, and his eyes immediately locked onto a person behind him. What did you just say? Beiqian's death is related to Xiao Rojin? The man suddenly became nervous when Di Xiaofeng stared at him. He nodded affirmatively. That's what everyone said. The news came from the Raging Flames sect. All right, if you don't believe me, you can ask Wang Yanhan. He's Di Beiqian's senior, so he knows better. Wang Yanhan. Di Xiaofeng frowned. Who is Wang Yanhan? At this moment, Wang Yanhan walked in front of Di Xiaofeng. I am. You're Beiqian's senior? Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. That's right. Beiqian and Hongzhuang are my junior brothers and sisters. They joined the Inferno School because I was there. Can you tell me what happened? Di Xiaofeng's tone softened a bit. Facing Beiqian's friends, he naturally wouldn't be so overbearing. Wang Yanhan quietly looked at Di Beiqian. In fact, he felt that the situation in front of him was very strange. Di Beiqian was clearly here, but Wang Yanhan was still asking around about Di Beiqian. However, even though he was full of doubts, since this was something Di Beiqian decided, he naturally had to help cover it up. Chapter 45:53. When I rushed over after knowing the situation, Beiqian and Hongzhuang were already gone. Every time this matter was brought up, Wang Yanhan felt that Xiao Rojin was extremely hateful. It was fortunate that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqian were lucky. If it was an ordinary person, they would have lost their life long ago. Therefore, Xiao Rojin still couldn't be dragged out of this matter. So this woman did it on purpose. Di Xiaofeng narrowed his eyes, his dark pupils rippling with a cold light. This woman was actually so vicious. Originally, his father suspected the Jun family. Now that the Xiao family's branch family members were here, he didn't know if the Xiao family was involved in this conspiracy. If the Xiao family was involved, then this matter would become even more troublesome. In the next second, Di Xiaofeng's gaze became firm again. No matter who dared to make a move on his brother, the Di family would definitely not let them go. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's gaze fall on her head, Xiao Rojin understood that if she didn't say anything, this day next year would be her death anniversary. Young Master Di, it was Bailey Hongzhuang who told us to leave at that time. Their death has nothing to do with me. Xiao Rojin hurriedly waved her hands, only hoping to clear her name. This matter, Did your Xiao family make a move? Di Xiaofeng ignored Xiao Roujin's words and lowered his voice to ask. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, Xiao Roujin's expression changed a bit. She also didn't know if this matter had anything to do with the Xiao family. If she revealed this situation, even if Di Xiaofeng let her go today, the main family probably wouldn't forgive her. At this moment, a loud sound came from not far away from her. She looked over and saw that there was an additional figure on the ground. At this moment, it was clearly lifeless and had turned into a corpse. This person was none other than Gong Tianfeng, who had escaped before. Looking at Gong Tianfeng's corpse, the cultivators present all sucked in a breath of cold air. It had only been a short period of time since Gong Tianfeng had escaped. Unexpectedly, she had already turned into a corpse. This showed how powerful this middle-aged man was. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked at Gong Tianfeng's corpse. From the shock on their faces, they could tell that the other party had killed her with a single blow. It was a complete suppression, so much so that Gong Tianfeng didn't even have time to fight back. Young master, it's settled. The man stood beside Di Xiaofeng again. Even though he was silent, no one dared to ignore him. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly and looked at Xiao Roujin again. Hurry up and answer me while I still have the patience. Otherwise, at this moment, Xiao Roujin couldn't care about anything else. She immediately told him everything she knew. I'm not targeting Di Beichen. It's just that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent in the light attribute is rather outstanding and has some influence on our Xiao family. That's why I sent this news back to the family. As for the rest, I really don't know anything. Xiao Roujin's face was extremely pale. Although she was only a branch family disciple of the Xiao family, she was like a fish in water in Rome city. She didn't want to lose her life because of this matter. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng didn't suspect that Xiao Roujin was lying. In fact, the Xiao family's true decision wasn't something a branch family disciple like Xiao Roujin could know. Chapter 45-54. Since you don't know anything, there's no use for you to live. Emperor Xiaofeng's voice was cold. After saying this, he didn't even bother to look at Xiao Roujin. Originally, he despised Xiao Roujin's character very much, but he wasn't a bloodthirsty person. Since she had already been punished, it was fine. Moreover, since this person had a grudge with Situ and the others, he believed that Situ and the others would settle it themselves. With his appearance, neither the Radiant Sacred Assembly nor the Raging Flames sect would interfere in this matter. However, when he found out that Xiao Roujin was actually involved in the death of his younger brother and sister-in-law, Xiao Roujin was destined to be a dead person, regardless of whether this matter was done by the Xiao family or not. Since this woman was hostile to Beichen and the others and didn't save them at the critical moment, he definitely couldn't forgive her. The first elder on the side had already shown his killing intent when he heard of Xiao Roujin's actions. A mere branch family disciple dared to make a move on their young master. She was simply courting death. After hearing Emperor Xiaofeng's words, the first elder didn't hesitate to make a move and directly slapped the top of Xiao Roujin's head. Xiao Roujin clearly understood that danger was approaching. She wanted to escape immediately, but just as she was about to escape, an aura locked onto her, causing her to be unable to move at all. Immediately after, she felt a sharp pain. Her origin energy began to dissipate, and her vitality began to dissipate. Before she died, her eyes fell on Di Xiaofeng, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others. She never thought that she would die in the hands of these cultivators from the lower world that she had never put in her eyes. Seeing Xiao Roujin die in front of him like this, Manager Sun's heart was filled with shock, but he didn't dare to say anything. The Di family was a huge family. Not to mention Xiao Roujin, even if Emperor Xiaofeng wanted to destroy the entire Raging Flame sect, what could they say? Right now, he only hoped that Emperor Xiaofeng wouldn't implicate the Raging Flame sect because of this matter. Otherwise, it would really be over. At this moment, Zhuo Hongyan also had the same thought. He never thought that the two young people from back then would have such a terrifying background. Although he couldn't understand why Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had such a powerful background, they still pretended to be cultivators from the lower realm. But now, It seemed that Di Beichun had some conflict with his family and left home. This kind of situation was not uncommon. Fortunately, he didn't treat Bailey Hongzhuang back then. This Di Xiaofeng didn't seem to be an unreasonable person. Manager Li looked at the unforeseen event in front of him and secretly exclaimed in his heart. None of them could afford to offend such a person. Fortunately, this matter had nothing to do with the Azure Dragon School. If they could use this matter to suppress the Raging Flame School, they would be more than happy to see it. Who was the person in charge of this matter in your Raging Flame School? Di Xiaofeng said coldly. Even though he knew that Di Beichun's death was due to the pursuit of other forces, the Raging Flame Gate was also responsible. Since he came to Rome and City this time, he naturally had to understand the situation here. Chapter 45-55. When everyone saw Manager Sun hurriedly push all the blame to Manager Wu, they felt some disdain in their hearts. Manager Sun was very arrogant when he was flaunting his power. Now that he had admitted defeat, he completely pushed all the blame away. From this, one could see his character. However, at this moment, Manager Sun couldn't care less about what others thought of him. Just now, he, Gong Tianfeng, and Xiao Rojin were standing on the same line. Now that Gong Tianfeng and Xiao Rojin had fallen, his greatest hope was to save his own life. Other than that, nothing else was important. Young Master D, you just have to ask Manager Wu. He knows everything very well. Manager Sun smiled embarrassedly. At this moment, Wang Yanhan couldn't help but stand up and say, Young Master D, Manager Wu is always taking good care of Beichun and Beichun. Manager Wu is also very sorry for their deaths. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng glanced at Wang Yanhan and then nodded. First Elder, go with Manager Sun to the Raging Flame sect and ask about the situation. I have some things to tell my friends. Yes, young master. In the next moment, the first elder took a step forward and lifted Manager Sun up like a chick. His figure quickly flew in the direction of the Raging Flames sect. Seeing this, Zhua Hongyan cupped his hands and said, Young Master D, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. You may leave. At the same time, Manager Li didn't stay any longer. Clearly, there was nothing else for him to do here. Di Xiaofeng waved his hand and turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun behind him. Situ, Yishuan, I didn't expect to meet you as soon as I came to Rome City. What a coincidence. When facing Di Beichun and the others, the coldness on Di Xiaofeng's face disappeared, and he became more approachable. Xiaofeng, thank you for helping us out just now, Di Beichun said. Di Xiaofeng smiled faintly. Situ, you're too polite. Even if I didn't step in, you would have found a way to resolve the situation. As the eldest young master of the Di clan, his judgment was naturally not simple. Earlier, he had already noticed that Di Beichun already had the intention to kill him. If he hadn't shown up, Di Beichun would have made his move. After all, Xiao Rojin was definitely no match for Di Beichun. It would be neat to kill her directly. In the next instant, Di Xiaofeng's gaze suddenly turned gloomy. Moreover, they bullied my younger brother and sister-in-law. I absolutely can't tolerate them. Thinking that Beichun had really fallen, Di Xiaofeng's mood was very gloomy. If possible, he wished he could meet his own younger brother. For so many years, he had been looking forward to reuniting with his younger brother. This was also the hope of their entire family. Who would have thought that they would not be able to reconcile in the end? Everyone naturally noticed Di Xiaofeng's sad and gloomy mood, and they all fell silent. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly sized up Di Xiaofeng. Ever since the previous incident, both she and Beichun had become very vigilant. They had to get to the bottom of this matter. She felt that Di Xiaofeng's sadness at this moment did not seem to be faked. On the contrary, he seemed to be really sad about Beichun's death. Moreover, in her impression, Di Xiaofeng was not such a sinister person. Even so, they still had to be cautious when dealing with this matter. Chapter 45-56. Young Master Wan Yin, you're my brother and sister-in-law's senior brother. I wonder if you can tell me more about them? Di Xiaofeng calmed himself down and looked at Wang Yanhan. Although the news of Di Beichun's death was basically set in stone, he still wanted to know more about his brother. Wang Yanhan nodded. No problem. There's a restaurant up ahead. Why don't we go there and talk? It's not convenient to talk on the street. Yi Haomiao suggested. After the unforeseen event earlier, they had already become the center of everyone's discussion. Now that they were standing here, there were many cultivators around them who had stopped to watch them. Their words could easily be overheard by others. Okay, in a private room in the restaurant, Di Beichun and the others sat down together. Di Xiaofeng clearly didn't care about the joy of reuniting with Di Beichun and the others. His mind was filled with his brother and sister-in-law situation. So my brother and sister-in-law are both heaven-sent geniuses. After hearing Wang Yanhan's words, Di Xiaofeng also understood. He couldn't help but feel proud. It turned out that his brother and sister-in-law were such geniuses. Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but nod. They're really rare geniuses. If it wasn't for their help, Wang Yanhan and I would have been dead. Then the people who chased after them, did you see clearly? Di Xiaofeng asked. No matter what, I must avenge my brother and sister-in-law. At that time, we saw 3 black-clothed men. Their strength was very strong. In just a face-to-face effort, they had already disappeared in front of our eyes. Moreover, they were all masked. We couldn't catch up to them at all. Wang Yanhan sighed and shook his head. He also hoped to help Di Beichun and Yi Haomiao find the people who chased after them. Unfortunately, they were helpless against such opponents. All right, you said that you didn't see my brother's body. Only a skeleton army appeared in front of us, right? Di Xiaofeng keenly grasped the information in Yi Haomiao's words. His heart tightened as he looked at Yi Haomiao. Is that so? Yi Haomiao nodded. Yes. If that's the case, then maybe my brother and the others are still alive. Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up again. Even though the possibility was small, it was still a possibility. Beichun and Hong Zhuang are both geniuses. Back then, Beichun went to the lower realm. Over the years, many people believe that he had fallen. However, not only is he alive and well, he even came to the upper realm. Maybe there will be a miracle this time. I always feel that the heavens take pity on us. One day, we will be reunited. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's hopeful look, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask, Xiaofeng, are you really looking forward to your brother's return? Of course. I only have one younger brother. All these years, the whole family has been hoping that he can come back soon. When my younger brother went missing, my mother cried every day. My father felt even more guilty and has been searching for him for the past 20 years. In fact, I haven't seen my father much over the years, but I understand him. All these years, I've been out a lot. Actually, I've been trying my luck. Maybe I'll be able to see him one day. Chapter 45-57. That's right, Yixian. I have another reason for coming to Rowan City. I want to invite you to my family. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help looking at Bailey Hongzhuang as he spoke. Your medical skills are very outstanding. I hope you can help me with something. No matter what the reward is, I'll do my best. Xiaofeng, you don't need to be so polite. Since you need help, I'll go to the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke up. They had originally planned to go to the Di family. She also wanted to know what Beichun's family was like. Xiaofeng, you want Yixian to go to your family to treat who? Di Beichun couldn't help but ask. It's my mother. Di Xiaofeng sighed. These years, because of my brother's disappearance, my mother has been depressed and crying all day. Her body is already very bad. A few days ago, my mother found out that my brother was still alive and her body got better. However, when she found out that my brother had died, she suffered an even bigger blow and her body is getting worse and worse. Now she has less and less energy. As long as she thinks of Beichun, her face will be covered in tears. If this continues, I'm afraid she won't be able to hold on for much longer. I know Yixian has a way to treat this kind of patient, so I wanted to ask you to treat my mother. This heart knot has been there for many years, and it won't be easy to treat it. However, we've already lost Beichun. We can't lose her too. Di Xiaofeng's eyes reddened. Everyone thought that he was born in such a glorious family, but they couldn't even have the most basic reunion. When he heard that Di Xiaofeng's mother couldn't hold on for much longer, Di Beichun's hand holding the teacup couldn't help but tremble. He didn't even notice the hot tea splashing onto his hand. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart couldn't help but tremble. She didn't expect the Di family to be in such a situation. Through Di Xiaofeng's description, she could already imagine the pain and sadness Di Beichen's mother had been in these years. Her son had led a wandering life for so many years, and she could no longer express how much she missed him. Originally, she was already unable to bear the burden of such longing and sadness. Later, she experienced such a blow from heaven to hell, so it was normal for her to become like this. Not to mention her, even if it was anyone else, they would not be able to withstand such a blow. Thinking back to how they had speculated about Beichen's background, it turned out that his parents loved him so much. Even if they didn't go to the Di family, they already knew everything. There was no need to mention Beichen's mother, and his father had been searching for him all these years. Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that Beichen would have died a long time ago if they hadn't found a doctor who could cure his cursed body. The Supreme Di clan was very clear about this situation. But during these years, they had been persisting in their search, not willing to give up. It was precisely because of the love in their hearts. As for Di Xiaofeng, she no longer doubted him. She noticed that when Di Xiaofeng said that he had never blamed his parents, his tone was very calm and full of understanding. In fact, Di Beichun had been wandering outside all these years. Everyone only felt that he had suffered a lot of grievances, but in fact, for more than 20 years, the people of the Di family had obviously put all their attention on Di Beichun. Chapter 45-58. Yixuan, I beg you, you must find a way to save my mother. Di Xiaofeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with red eyes. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was the only hope he could think of. Di Yujue had already invited all the miracle doctors he could, but there was no effect. If Lan Yixuan couldn't cure his mother, then there was really no hope. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Xiaofeng, don't worry. I will do my best. In fact, as soon as she knew that the patient was Di Beichen's mother, Bailey Hongzhuang would do her best to treat her. That was her mother-in-law. However, she believed that as long as Di Beichen went back, she wouldn't need to do anything and his mother would recover. After all, the heart of the heart had to be cured. Lin Yunqing had been looking forward to Di Beichen's return for so many years. As long as Di Beichen went back, her illness would be mostly cured. All right, Brother Wan Yin is my brother and sister-in-law's senior brother. He is also your senior brother. So, you know my brother and sister-in-law too? Di Xiaofeng looked at Di Beichen and Lan Yixuan in surprise. He didn't expect that the two friends he made outside were his brother's senior brother and sister. Yes, we are all from Penglai Palace. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Just as they were talking, when Xiren and the others also rushed over. Just as they opened the door of the private room, when Xiren's impatient voice came in. I heard that you guys had a conflict with Xiao Rojin outside. Along the way, they heard that everyone was talking about this. Even if they didn't see it with their own eyes, they almost understood the whole process. It wasn't until they came in that when Xiren realized that Di Xiaofeng was also here. He immediately cupped his hands to Di Xiaofeng. Young Master Di is also here. Di Xiaofeng smiled and nodded. We meet again. Xiren originally had a stomach full of questions, but after seeing Di Xiaofeng, he swallowed them back down. He had heard that Di Xiaofeng was from the Di clan. Didn't they originally plan to go to the Di clan? Most importantly, what was the relationship between Di Xiaofeng and Beichen? Di Xiaofeng naturally noticed Xiren's hesitant look, but he didn't care. After all, he had only interacted with Xiren and the others for a short period of time. Naturally, it was impossible for him to tell them everything. Young master, I've already inquired about the matter. The great elder quickly returned, but he didn't continue speaking either. Seeing this, Di Beichen stood up and said, Xiaofeng, since you still have things to do, then we'll go back first. You can directly go to the Azure Dragon Gate and let us know when we're leaving. All right. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left, Di Xiaofeng looked at the great elder. Great elder, what's the situation? Hearing Di Xiaofeng's question, the great elder didn't immediately answer. Instead, he looked in the direction Di Beichen and the others left and said, Young master, your two friends have disguised themselves. Hearing this, Di Di Xiaofeng was slightly stunned. Disguise. Chapter 45-59. Although I don't know how young Master met them, but since they have never treated young Master with their true faces, I think it's best to be careful when making friends with them. The great elder's eyes flashed with wisdom and contemplation. Although he had a good impression of Di Beichun, since they were being so secretive, there must be something they couldn't tell others. Di Xiaofeng also didn't expect such a situation. Since Di Beichun saved him, he had always regarded these two as friends that he could make deep friends with. If it wasn't for the great elder's reminder, he would never have known that Di Beichun had disguised themselves. Even so, he still felt that Di Beichun didn't mean to deceive him, because as early as the first time they met, the two of them had already disguised themselves. Moreover, the two of them had been in disguise ever since they came to Romance City. It could be seen that this disguise wasn't targeted at him. Previously, he had heard that they went to Shueiyun City because they were being chased. Presumably, this disguise was also to hide from the people who were chasing them. Great Elder, I believe that they are sincere to me, Di Xiaofeng slowly said. No matter what reason Di Beichun and Di Xiaofeng had disguised themselves, from the day he pretended to be drunk, he knew that the two of them were sincere to him. Seeing that Di Xiaofeng had already confirmed this point, the great elder helplessly shook his head but didn't say anything. He understood that the young master had his own thoughts, and it was useless for him to say anything more. However, he still felt that there was something wrong with people who couldn't be sincere. Great Elder, let's not talk about this for now. Tell me in detail what you learned from the Raging Flames sect. Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked towards the Azure Dragon sect. Xiren couldn't help but ask, what's going on? Is Di Xiaofeng really from the Di family? Then what's the relationship between you two? He was really confused now. He just wanted the guild and didn't expect so many things to happen. Di Xiaofeng is Beichun's biological brother. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Di Beichun had been silent the whole time. This sudden situation clearly needed some time to digest. They had already learned from A.O. Lingxiao that Beichun had an older brother, but they didn't expect this older brother to be Di Xiaofeng. Life was really full of coincidences. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, when Xiran's voice was sluggish. This situation was really unexpected. Then what do you plan? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichun and then said, Beichun's mother was too sad when she heard that he had died. Now she is seriously ill, so we plan to go to the Di family first. No matter what, we cannot let anything happen to his mother. That's true. Xiran nodded. This is also good. If we take this opportunity to go to the Di family, Beichun can safely return to the Di family. The reason why they didn't go to the Di family was because they were worried that they might encounter an accident on the way. Now that Di Xiaofeng was leading the way, their journey would be much smoother. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything. She just gave him a look. Xiran immediately understood. This situation still needed Di Beichun to make the decision. In fact, this kind of thing about one's background, no matter who it was, would need some time to think about it. Chapter 45-60. These were all his direct relatives. It was a pity that he had never interacted with them before. Thinking about it, no matter who it was, they wouldn't know what to do in such a situation. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't worried at all, because she had experienced this before. Thinking back to when she found out about her background, her feelings were very complicated. But the moment she saw her relatives, all the psychological burden instantly disappeared. The feeling of blood being thicker than water was innate. When Xiran and the others also understood that Di Beichun needed some time to think about things. Immediately, everyone returned to their own residences. Wanyan Han, Wanyan Ling, and Yi Haomiao didn't return to the Raging Flames sect. Instead, they came to the Azure Dragon sect with them. Previously, they had already offended Manager Sunday. Although Manager Wu was the one in charge of their affairs, there were many ways to deal with them after offending a manager in the sect. Although Di Xiaofeng was here now and Manager Sun didn't dare to do anything to them, once Di Xiaofeng left, their situation would be worse. Luckily, Manager Li of the Azure Dragon sect had also extended an olive branch to them. If they could stay in the Azure Dragon sect, it would be good news for them. However, they were only temporarily staying in Xiren's residence. As for how to deal with all this, they hadn't thought about it yet. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea for Di Beichun before saying, "Beichun, you also plan to make a trip to the Di family, right?" Di Beichun nodded slightly. This time, he definitely had to go back. His mother was seriously ill because of him. If he didn't go back, how could he be at ease? As long as you go back, your mother will know that you're still alive. Her illness will be cured without any treatment. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle and comforting. Previously, she had also noticed Di Beichun's reaction when he heard that Lin Yunqing was seriously ill. Actually, these relatives occupied an extremely important position in Di Beichun's heart. However, as long as we go to the Di clan, I'm sure your father will recognize you immediately. Staring at Di Beichun with her bright black eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang knew very well that although her disguise technique was not bad, at the level of cultivation of Di Beichun's father, recognizing a person no longer depended on their appearance, but on their aura. It was possible to disguise one's appearance, but it was very difficult to hide one's aura. Thus, their return this time around was to reveal their identities. Di Beichun nodded. "I understand. If I'm not wrong, the Great Elder has already seen through our disguises." Di Beichun's eyes were bright and wise. He could feel that the Elder was looking at them with a trace of doubt. Moreover, the Elder's gaze was fixed on him and Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. So, Xiaofeng should already know. For a moment, the two of them fell into silence. If Di Xiaofeng knew that they had been using disguises to face him, who knew what he would think? After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang said, "Do you think we should talk about it after we return to the Di family, or now?" If it wasn't for the assassination earlier, they would have already told him frankly. But now, the decision was in Di Beichun's hands. Chapter 4561. Let me think about it. Di Beichun said in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and didn't disturb Di Beichun anymore. Actually, it was safer to talk after returning to the Di family, but she was worried that Di Xiaofeng would be suspicious because they didn't trust him enough. But if she said it now, once Di Xiaofeng had second thoughts, they would be in danger again. Early the next morning, Di Xiaofeng came to the Azure Dragon sect. "Situ, Yishuan, can you guys come back to the family with me today?" Di Xiaofeng's face was somewhat helpless. He already understood the situation from the Raging Flames sect, but he didn't have a specific goal. The most important thing now was his mother's illness, so he couldn't delay. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded without hesitation. "No problem. Thank you so much." Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with gratitude. Although he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Situ Yishuan had been hiding their true identities, he believed that their friendship was real. "Xiaofeng, this time, when I go to the Di clan, can I bring Ziran and the others with me?" Di Beichun slowly asked. He was very clear that once he went to the Di family, his identity wouldn't be hidden anymore. Ziran and the others came to the upper realm because of him. If he went to the Di family, he naturally couldn't let Ziran and the others continue to stay here. They already had a tacit understanding on this point. However, after Di Xiaofeng and Great Elder heard Di Beichun's request, their expressions became very strange. They only asked Bailey Hongzhuang to treat Lin Yunqing. It was understandable that Di Beichun would go with them, but it was strange that so many people were going together. "Young Master Situ, we're only going to treat her this time." This Great Elder only said half of his words, but everyone understood what he meant. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichun. It was indeed difficult for him to accept such a request without knowing anything about it. However, just as Di Beichun was about to explain, Di Xiaofeng suddenly waved his hand and said, "Since Situ brought it up, then let's do it." Hearing Di Xiaofeng's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised. They knew the specific situation, so they weren't surprised by Di Beichun's suggestion. Di Xiaofeng didn't know anything, but he agreed just like that. Did he really trust them that much? "Let's go." Di Xiaofeng smiled. "Thank you." Di Beichun's deep eyes flashed with a complicated and bright light, but there was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Just as everyone was preparing to set off together, Wang Yanhan suddenly spoke up. Said Uishuan, I have some words I want to say to you all. Hearing that, Di Beichen and the others looked at Wang Yanhan in surprise, not knowing what he wanted to say at this time. Then you all go ahead. I'll wait for you all, Di Xiaofeng said tactfully. After Di Xiaofeng and Great Elder left, Wang Yanhan said, Di Beichen, you all are going to the Di family. We won't go. Why? Di Beichen frowned. Ever since they came to the upper realm, Wang Yanhan had always taken care of them. After such a long time together, he already treated Wang Yanhan as a good brother. Chapter 4562. Go ahead. I believe that we will meet again in the future. Wang Yanhan had a warm and sunny smile on his face as he wished Di Beichen well. When he found out that Di Beichen was the young master of the Di family, he knew that they were no longer in the same world. If they followed Di Beichen to the Di family, they would not be mistreated. However, he hoped to create his own world through his own efforts. Only in this way, when they met Di Beichen and the others in the future, they could still maintain their current relationship. He knew that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were sincere to them. However, they were different from when Xiren and the others. When Xiren and the others had a long relationship with Di Beichen, they naturally could not compare. Di Beichen looked deeply at Wang Yanhan. He understood Wang Yanhan's thoughts. After a moment of silence, he said, Okay, eldest senior brother, there will definitely be a day when we meet again. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wang Yanhan with reluctance in her eyes. Although she did not spend much time with Wang Yanhan, she really treated Wang Yanhan as a big brother. That's right, we will. Yi Hao Miao and Wang Yanling also said, You must take care. You must take care too. When Di Xiaofeng saw that Wang Yanhan and the others did not come together, he was also surprised. However, he did not ask. Let's go. Then, everyone walked towards the teleportation array. A feeling of dislocation came, and when they opened their eyes again, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were already in a strange city. This Ganyang city is only a transit station. It will take some time to reach my Di family. Di Xiaofeng explained slowly. Flying is prohibited in Ganyang City. We will fly to my family after leaving Ganyang City. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were confused. With their current strength, it was indeed possible for them to fly, but if they were to fly for a long time, they would not be able to withstand it. Could it be that this Ganyang City was already very close to the Di clan? However, when they arrived outside the city, they understood. This was because Di Xiaofeng and First Elder had taken out 2 flying carriages. This is a flying magic artifact? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 2 flying chariots in front of her in surprise. She had heard of the upper realms flying chariots before. These flying chariots were refined by master refiners, but she had never seen one before. In Rome and City, she had only interacted with ordinary cultivators in the sect. She did not have such a background at all. Di Xiaofeng nodded. That's right, my flying magic artifact doesn't have a lot of space because I'm usually alone. My family has a large flying magic artifact, but mine is just a simple one. Now that we're all going to fly there together, we need 2. When Xiren and the rest were pleasantly surprised when they saw the flying instrument. They had only heard of such a treasure before, so they were really curious about its effects. Instantly, the entire group split into 2 and sat in the 2 flying chariots. After everyone sat in, they felt the chariot shake, then they flew into the sky. Sitting in the flying chariot, it felt very stable and the flying speed was extremely fast. Chapter 4563. Sitting on the flying car, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the layout of the flying car. Although Di Xiaofeng's flying car wasn't big, the layout was very luxurious. It wasn't simple at a glance. She had come into contact with flying magic tools before, but she wasn't a forger, so she didn't know much about it. However, she still had basic eyesight. It was clear that Di Xiaofeng's flying magic tool wasn't low grade. For a large family like the Di family, the young master's things naturally wouldn't be bad. Di Xiaofeng sat at the front of the flying car. After setting the direction, he turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. My flying magic tool is usually used by me alone, so I chose a small one. Actually, another reason is that although this flying magic tool is small, it's fast. After all, the larger the size, the greater the resistance. Head Elder often takes the juniors out to do things, so his flying magic tool is bigger. Di Xiaofeng explained with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also saw the Head Elder's flying magic tool. It was indeed much bigger than Di Xiaofeng's. At this moment, there were only 3 people sitting on Di Xiaofeng's flying magic tool. Xiren and the others were with the Head Elder. So it's like that. Di Beichun smiled faintly. With this kind of flying magic tool, traveling is indeed much more convenient. Although this flying magic tool wasn't as fast as a teleportation formation, not every place had a teleportation formation, so the flying magic tool was undoubtedly useful. If they had a flying magic tool, they wouldn't have to spend so much effort to travel. Di Xiaofeng looked at Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang. His eyes flashed with a complicated light. He wanted to say something, but he stopped. After a while, Di Xiaofeng said, Sidu Xuan, I don't have many friends, but I really think of you as good friends. As soon as the words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed a bit. It seemed that their guess was right. Di Xiaofeng already knew about their disguise. I know you've disguised yourselves. No matter what the reason is, I still hope that we can treat each other with sincerity. Di Xiaofeng's dark eyes were filled with sincerity. If it was just him, he wouldn't think too deeply about it. But Bailey Hongzhuang was going to treat his mother, so he had to eliminate all possibilities. Bailey Hongzhuang did not reply. Instead, she looked at Di Beichun. Until now, she still did not know what decision Di Beichun had made. However, now that Di Xiaofeng had already spoken to this point, it was naturally impossible for him not to give a reason. Actually, you deliberately let us sit with you, Di Beichun said slowly. He had already discovered this long ago. Di Xiaofeng's flying carriage was indeed small, but the First Elder's flying carriage was very big. They could ride the First Elder's flying carriage together, but Di Xiaofeng still wanted to ride separately. At that time, he had already guessed the reason. That's right. Di Xiaofeng didn't deny it. I'm very sorry. No. Di Beichun waved his hand. Actually, we were hiding something from you. Even if you didn't say it, I was going to tell you the truth. He wasn't stupid. In fact, he saw through these things very clearly. Di Xiaofeng cared about their friendship, but the First Elder definitely didn't believe them. Chapter 45-64. Seeing that Di Beichun was willing to be honest with him, Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. It seemed that his judgment was right. Di Beichun and Di Xiaofeng treated him with sincerity. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked a question. Xiaofeng, do you hope that your brother will never go back? Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng was startled. He frowned and his face turned cold. Why? I've always wanted my brother to go back as soon as possible. If he goes back, won't you have another competitor? Bailey Hongzhuang looked straight into Di Xiaofeng's eyes. It wasn't that she was narrow-minded. In fact, this kind of thing was common in large families. It was rare to see 2 brothers who had a good relationship and helped each other. Di Xiaofeng shook his head. I understand what you're saying, but this kind of thing won't happen in my Di family. Seeing Di Xiaofeng's confident look, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly glanced at Di Beichun and didn't say anything else. Di Beichun's lips gradually curved into a smile. Back then, because we were being chased, we were worried that we would encounter enemies again, so we disguised ourselves. When we first met you, we didn't know that you were from the Di family. We only thought that you were an ordinary cultivator. We were worried that you would be implicated by us, so we didn't face you with our real faces. Di Xiaofeng's expression softened. In fact, he had already guessed this. Even if the Great Elder didn't agree with his point of view, he had always believed that his judgment wouldn't be wrong. Now it seemed that he was right. Back then, you were being chased in Romance City? Di Xiaofeng frowned. What a coincidence. My brother and sister-in-law were also being chased in Romance City. However, you're all cultivators from the lower realm. Why were you being chased? Di Xiaofeng was a bit confused. Logically speaking, cultivators from the lower realm shouldn't be a threat to cultivators from the upper realm. Normally, this kind of situation wouldn't happen. However, when he said this, Di Di Xiaofeng's expression suddenly changed. His gaze was fixed on Di Beichen and Li Wuyo. This situation seemed to be too much of coincidence. His younger brother and sister-in-law were being hunted down. Situ and Yi Xian were also being hunted down. Wang Yanhan was his younger brother and sister-in-law's senior martial brother. Similarly, he was the senior martial brother of Situ and Situ. How could there be so many coincidences in this world? Wait, Di Xiaofeng stretched out his hand. I need a strand. I have an impossible idea. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other and smiled. Both of them stopped talking. It seemed that Di Xiaofeng had understood. After a long while, Di Xiaofeng suddenly raised his head and looked at Di Beichun in disbelief. Di Beichun nodded quietly. You guessed right. You're Di Beichun? Di Xiaofeng's eyes widened. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes quietly turned red. Situ Chung, Di Beichun. He remembered his father saying that the person who was itching to kill Di Beichun was called Situ Yen. All this time, he had never thought in this direction. However, now that everything was connected, he suddenly understood. Di Beichun smiled faintly and nodded. That's right. It's me. Di Xiaofeng's voice trembled and choked. You're still alive. Chapter 45-65. Looking at the handsome face in front of him, Di Xiaofeng didn't feel unfamiliar at all, because he had seen this face in the portrait before. That's right, it's him. He's my brother. That's great. You're still alive. Di Xiaofeng was so excited that he couldn't control himself. His eyes were a little wet as he opened his arms to Di Beichen. Di Beichen's smile gradually widened as the two brothers hugged each other. Good boy. Di Xiaofeng patted Di Beichen's back. I knew you would survive. You don't know how much we've been waiting for you to come back. It's a good thing you're fine. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were red as he held back his tears. For so many years, all of them had been waiting for Di Beichen to come back. He didn't expect that he would see him before. No wonder when he first saw Di Beichen, he felt like they were old friends at first sight. At this moment, he understood everything. Di Beichen's smile gradually widened. He didn't say anything. At this moment, nothing needed to be said. Bailey Hongzhuang watched the process of the two brothers' reunion, and her heart was filled with joy. Perhaps their reunion wasn't earth-shattering, but men weren't good at expressing their emotions. She could feel that the two of them were extremely excited at this moment. Brothers who had been separated for more than 20 years finally met. They were unfamiliar yet familiar, but there was no barrier between them. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also removed her disguise. Di Beichen's judgment was right. Di Xiaofeng was indeed trustworthy, and she was really happy for Beichen, because in such a huge family, having such a brotherly relationship was very precious. After a moment, Di Xiaofeng let go of Di Beichen and quietly wiped the corners of his eyes. The smile on his face became even brighter. Beichen, I really didn't expect you to be Beichen. Even now, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but sigh. This sudden change made him feel as if he had fallen into a dream. For a moment, he didn't even dare to believe that all of this was real. He was even afraid that this was just a dream. I didn't expect you to be my big brother. Di Beichen chuckled. When I first found out that you were Wang Yanhan's junior brothers and sisters, I felt that it was very strange. However, I couldn't figure out what it was strange about. Until now, I finally understand. Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. In fact, ever since he went to Rome and City, he had a strange feeling lingering in his heart. Now he finally understood. When we found out that you were the young master of the Supreme D clan, we were also extremely shocked. No wonder you two were so close to each other. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. When Beichen first met Uncle, he also hit it off very well. Actually, I should have guessed it back when I was in Watercloud City. Only then did Di Xiaofeng look at Bailey Hongzhuang. With one look, he couldn't help but be stunned. Before, Bailey Hongzhuang could only be said to be a delicate and pretty girl. But now, Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely a stunning woman. It was a kind of breathtaking beauty. He admitted that he had never seen such a beautiful girl in his life. All the beautiful adjectives in the world seemed to be insufficient to add to her body. Such a beauty, should only exist in the heavens. Big Brother. Seeing Di Xiaofeng staring at his wife in a daze, Di Beichun couldn't help but call out. Chapter 4566. Second Brother. I've long heard that sister-in-law is a beauty. Seeing you today is simply shocking. Di Xiaofeng laughed heartily. My second brother is really lucky, huh? It's mainly because I have good taste. Di Beichun admitted bluntly. Bailey Hongzhuang listened to the two's praise, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. You're really not polite. Di Xiaofeng laughed and scolded, although this is also the truth. The two clearly just recognized each other, but at this moment, they were very natural with each other, as if they had never been separated all these years. I finally understand why you want everyone to follow you back to the family. It turns out that you've already made up your mind. As he spoke, Di Xiaofeng suddenly frowned. Oh right, since you've already come to the upper realm, why didn't you return to the family? We originally planned to go back, but although the Di family's reputation is resounding, most people don't even know where it is. Moreover, after we were suddenly attacked, we also guessed a few possibilities, so we planned to understand the situation clearly before taking action. However, it just so happened that you came to find us, so we naturally went back on the way. The handsome and perfect face rippled with an evil smile. This time, they had indeed taken a ride. If it wasn't for Di Xiaofeng bringing them back, they were afraid that they would have to rely on their own 2 feet to hurry back, which would take a long time. This is because the heavens can't bear to see you wandering outside, so they sent me to Rome and city to bring you back as soon as possible. Ever since he found out that Di Beichun was his younger brother, the smile on Di Xiaofeng's face never disappeared. In the past, he had also fantasized about his younger brother's appearance. Now that he looked at Di Beichun in front of him, he was really satisfied. This was even more satisfying than he had imagined. Actually, this is also because Father has always been unwilling to give up. We received news that you had already fallen, but Father was always unwilling to believe it. Originally, he insisted on going in city to take a look, but because I said that I wanted to find Yixian to treat Mother's injuries, so I went instead. Mother's situation is quite bad now, so she can't go without someone to accompany her. Di Xiaofeng's eyes quietly flashed with a trace of sadness, but he quickly recovered. Now that Beichun is back, Mother will definitely recover. Di Beichun nodded slightly, his eyes filled with anticipation. He also hoped that Lin Yunqing's condition would get better soon. He finally came back, and he hoped that his family could be reunited. Brother Xiaofeng, can you tell me more about the Di family? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Xiaofeng curiously. Until now, they didn't know much about the Di family. Now that Di Xiaofeng was here, he naturally wanted to know more. No problem. Di Xiaofeng chuckled. You've already met Father. As for Mother, she's a famous beauty. Sister-in-law, just look at me and second brother. Of course, Father's looks aren't bad either. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Indeed, when she first saw Di Yujue, he was also a first-class handsome man. Mother is the young miss of the Lin family. The Lin family is also a big family. Back then, Father and Mother's union was a strong union, but Mother was a famous beauty and had many pursuers. Father was also very capable, so he captured Mother's heart. Chapter 4567. I heard that Father and Mother were a pair that everyone envied. They were very loving, but I rarely saw them together. Ever since Beichun disappeared, Mother has been sad and blamed Father. Father blamed himself and has been searching for Beichun's whereabouts all these years. However, I can still see that they are very much in love because they are always worried about each other. Di Xiaofeng's voice was full of emotion. If Beichun hadn't been wandering outside, they would have been very happy all these years. Di Beichun fell silent after hearing all this. He already knew about this situation before. When he chatted with Di Yujue, he knew that Di Yujue loved his wife very much. It was just that he was unwilling to forgive him because of one thing. However, at that time, he didn't know that it was all because of him. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was slightly touched. She believed that after hearing all this, Di Beichun would no longer have any dissatisfaction with the family. It wasn't that the Supreme Di clan had given up on him. Rather, it was because he was plotted against by his enemies. All these years, the Supreme D clan had always placed Bei Chen's safety in their hearts. No one had ever chosen to give him up. Until this time, everyone was sure that Bei Chen was no longer around. However, whether it was Di Yujue or Di Xiaofeng, they didn't give up and insisted on confirming. That year, father went out and you disappeared. All these years, grandfather was unwilling to forgive father. Originally, grandfather was prepared to hand over the position of family head to father 20 years ago. Because of this, grandfather has been the family head all these years. Not only that, in fact, father would be scolded by grandfather every time he came back. Speaking of this, Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but laugh. In the past, because they were worried about Bei Chen's safety, they weren't in the mood to joke. However, now that he knew that Bei Chen was doing well, he was completely relieved. At this moment, when he recalled the way his father had been scolded all these years, he really felt that it was very funny. One must know that in the eyes of outsiders, Di Yujue was an awe-inspiring figure. But in the family, he was actually in such a situation. If word got out, perhaps no one would be willing to believe it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also smiled. From Di Xiaofeng's description, they could already imagine what kind of personality his grandfather had. With Di Yujue's status, perhaps only the old man of the Di family dared to scold him like this. Just a few days ago, grandfather passed the position of patriarch to father. Because grandfather felt that this matter was all his fault, grandfather had been in seclusion for this period of time. I think he took all the responsibility on himself. Di Xiaofeng slowly told Di Beichen about Di Kaiyuan. After listening to all of this, Di Beichen's expression changed slightly. If it was said that he was very unfamiliar with the Di family before and didn't feel anything, but now after hearing all of this, he had an indescribable sense of belonging to the Di family. Bailey Hongzhuang also didn't expect that the Di family would have such a misunderstanding. In the end, this matter couldn't be blamed on the old man of the Di family. It was just that Di Kaiyuan had gone into a dead end and taken the wrong path. Fortunately, Beichen is fine. I believe that after Beichen goes back, everyone will be able to untie the knot in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Chapter 4568. Now all of this would disappear with Di Beichen's return. Thinking of this, she felt very happy. Right now, I can't wait to return to the family and tell them this good news. Di Xiaofeng's smile was extremely bright. I really want to see their happy faces when the time comes. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were happy here, when Xiren and the others were not used to being with the head elder. However, the head elder clearly didn't want to talk to them. He kept silent the whole way, so they just closed their eyes and cultivated. In fact, the head elder's mood was very complicated. He originally wanted everyone to take the same flying car, but the young master insisted on taking the same car with them. Although he didn't want to, he couldn't dissuade the young master and could only agree. He always felt that Di Beichen and Di Xiaofeng were hiding something. Plus, the young master was ambushed before, so he couldn't help but worry. Fortunately, according to his judgment, the two weren't as strong as the young master. Otherwise, no matter what, he wouldn't let the young master do this. It would take a few days to fly from here to the Di family. He was really worried that something would happen midway. While thinking, the head elder's gaze couldn't help but sweep over Xiren and the others. With these hostages in his hands, he believed that there wouldn't be any problems. Xiren and the others didn't know that the head elder had so many thoughts flashing through his mind. They also didn't know that they were hostages in the head elder's eyes. They only thought that the head elder didn't have any interest in them. Di Beichen, I can guarantee that as long as the news of your return spreads out, grandfather and grandmother will quickly rush over. Di Xiaofeng seemed to have suddenly thought of this, and a trace of smile appeared on his face. Grandfather and grandmother? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. He had only heard of the Di family, but didn't know much about grandfather and grandmother. Mother is from the Lin family. Our grandfather is the head of the Lin family. The Lin family is also a cultivation family. Back then, father and mother's union was a strong union. Back then, her mother was the apple of her grandfather's eye. At that time, when her father became his son-in-law, her grandfather was very picky. It was only after he accepted her that things became better. Because my mother was the only daughter of my maternal grandfather, when my mother was pregnant, she asked her first son to inherit the Lin family, which was me. As for you, you are the true successor of the Supreme D clan. When you were born, it was the happiest time for the whole family. Mother gave birth to 2 boys, and it just so happened that both of them had heirs. Not only that, you were found to have the cursed body. Actually, the cursed body has always been passed down in our D family. Once the cursed physique transforms into the heavenly mandate physique, your cultivation speed will increase greatly, and you will become a true genius. From then on, you will be the successor of the D clan. I just didn't expect something like that to happen. Di Xiaofeng looked helpless. If that hadn't happened, everything would have been great. After hearing all of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with shock. She didn't expect there to be such a story. No wonder Di Xiaofeng didn't mind Di Beichen's appearance at all. It turned out that he was already set as the successor of the Lin family. Chapter 45-69. Actually, Father is quite pitiful. Ever since he went missing, not only did Grandfather scold Father badly, Grandfather also scolded Father no less than Grandfather. Because of this, Grandfather wasn't willing to contact the D family these years. It's just that Mother and I would often go to the Lin family. Di Xiaofeng sighed faintly. The 2 old men of the 2 families had bad tempers. Di Beichen was the apple of everyone's eye. With such a precious apple gone, one could imagine the situation. It seems like I can already imagine the scene when Master returns to the D family. Xiao Bai, who was sitting on Di Beichen's shoulder, couldn't help but sigh. So, my master is the big apple of the 2 families, ah. Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Di Beichen's expression was a bit unnatural. It wasn't appropriate for a grown man like him to be called an apple, right? Then it's going to be lively. When we go back, we'll be able to meet everyone very quickly. Xiaohei suddenly raised her eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang playfully. Master, it's time for the ugly daughter-in-law to meet her parents-in-law. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and her eyes were filled with threat. Ugly daughter-in-law. No. Xiaohei hurriedly waved her hands. Beautiful daughter-in-law, beautiful daughter-in-law. Looking at the mischievous Xiaohei and Xiao Bai, Di Xiaofeng chuckled. The family already knows about sister-in-law's matter. When Father went to the lower realm, he went to the Tiangang sect. He learned a lot about your marriage and your experience together. Sister-in-law, we are very grateful for your family's care for Beichen all these years. Di Xiaofeng's expression was serious. He heard that Bailey Hongzhuang's family was very outstanding in the lower realm. Beichen was adopted by Bailey Hongzhuang's grandfather since he was young and later married his granddaughter to him. They would remember this kindness in their hearts. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang instantly understood. Originally, she was still worried about the situation at the D clan. After all, she was just a cultivator from the lower realm, and no one could be sure that she wouldn't be biased by her family background. Of course, she also believed in Di Beichen's feelings for her. After several days of traveling, the flying car finally came to a stop on a flat piece of land. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others got off the flying car, the Great Elder, Wen Ziren, and the others quickly walked over. The first elder was originally worried about Di Xiaofeng's safety, but when he saw Di Beichen, he couldn't help but be stunned. His face was filled with astonishment. Isn't this the second young master? As the Great Elder of the D clan, he had seen Di Beichen's portrait before. This young man in front of him clearly looked exactly the same as the second young master. Ziren and the others also noticed that Di Beichen and Di Beichen had revealed their true faces. In their hearts, they already knew that Di Beichen had revealed everything. Di Xiaofeng looked at the Great Elder's incredulous expression and couldn't help but chuckle. That's right, he is Beichen. What? The Great Elder raised his voice. He was also someone who had experienced great storms, but wasn't this news too shocking? Didn't they go to pick up the great young master's friend? Why did they pick up the second young master? Although all of this made him feel incredulous, there was a feeling of extreme joy in his heart. The second young master really didn't die. Chapter 4570. Your second young master? The first elder stood in front of Di Baichun, his face filled with unconcealable joy and excitement. Second young master, you're still alive. Di Baichun noticed the first elder's excited look and understood that the first elder was also one of his close relatives. A smile appeared on his face. Yes, I'm back. That's great. The first elder excitedly wiped the corners of his eyes. All these years, we've all been waiting for you to come back. Now that you're finally back, that's great. Now everyone can finally be at ease. That's great. The first elder said, that's great 3 times in a row to express his joy. Let's go back quickly. I'm sure everyone will be very happy to see second young master. The first elder's face was full of smiles. At this moment, he had completely forgotten that he had doubted Di Baichun and felt that they were a threat to first young master. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest behind saw this scene, and their smiles gradually widened. Even if they weren't Di Baichun, they could feel Di Baichun's happiness at this moment. How far are we from the Di family residence? Shangguan Ying looked at the large grassland and mountain peaks in front of her. She was puzzled. They weren't there yet. Why did they stop? This is it. Di Xiaofeng smiled and said. Shangguan Ying couldn't help but be stunned. This is it? That's right. Di Xiaofeng nodded. He casually took out a few formation flags and threw them forward. As his hand moved, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest found that the scene in front of them suddenly changed. The grassland and mountain peaks had disappeared and were replaced by a flight of stairs that reached into the clouds. This white jade flight of stairs had more than 1,000 steps, and they couldn't see the end at a glance. Surrounding them were mountains that reached into the clouds and surrounded the white jade flight of stairs. It was like a fairyland. An indescribable feeling of vastness and magnificence lingered in everyone's hearts. As everyone walked into this area, they felt the dense primordial qi in the air. This density of primordial qi was not comparable to ordinary places. Feeling this, everyone's eyes couldn't help but be filled with deep amazement. So, this was the foundation of the great aristocratic families. With such dense yuan qi, the cultivation speed here is incomparable to the outside world. When Xiren couldn't help but sigh. This level of elemental energy, they had also experienced it back in the demonic training tower. However, one had to pay an exorbitant price to enter the magic training tower, and the effect was far inferior to the D families. In an instant, everyone understood. It was no wonder that cultivators from the aristocratic families were incomparable to ordinary cultivators. Cultivating in such a place with such dense yuan qi, one's cultivation speed was naturally incomparable to that of an ordinary person. Even if they were to cultivate here, the speed of their breakthroughs would be much faster than outside. Wow, today is really an eye-opener. Shangguan Ying stared with her big round eyes, her pretty face full of curiosity. Even though they had already guessed that the aristocratic families of the upper realm were definitely extraordinary, the shock in their hearts could no longer be described with words after seeing it with their own eyes. Actually, they understood that what they saw now was only the tip of the iceberg, and this tip was already very shocking. Chapter 4571. There should be a huge spirit gathering array here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Although she didn't know much about arrays, only the area around the D family had such dense energy. It was obvious that the entire D family was surrounded by the spirit gathering array. Not only that, there should be a spirit vein buried underground. Spirit vein was a spirit stone mine. Bailey Hongzhuang was sure that there was a spirit vein buried under the D family. Otherwise, even if they built a huge spirit gathering array, they wouldn't be able to create such dense energy. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of when Xiren and the others changed slightly. They had only come into contact with spirit stones when they were on Penglai Island. Normally, it was already very difficult for them to earn enough spirit stones for cultivation. However, the entire D family was actually located on top of a spirit vein. In addition to this spirit-gathering array, it provided an extremely good cultivation environment for all the cultivators of the D family. This was a well-deserved extravagance. I didn't expect sister-in-law to know about this. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with surprise. Usually, cultivators from the lower realm wouldn't come into contact with such things. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I only learned about it from books. There are indeed spirit veins buried under our D family, and there's more than one. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with pride. In fact, all the big families are built on top of spirit veins. The spirit gathering array set up like this has the best effect. Everyone nodded in agreement. They had already sensed the effects of the pills as soon as they arrived. Let's go in. If everyone knows that you're back, they'll be very happy, Di Xiaofeng said with a smile. Then, everyone didn't delay. Di Xiaofeng and the Great Elder led everyone up the white jade stairs. Walking on the white jade stairs, everyone realized that the higher they went, the denser the energy they felt. Thinking about it, the place with the densest energy must be at the top. When they got closer, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that there were people living at the foot of the mountain. The cultivators who live at the foot of the mountain are basically disciples of the branch family a few generations later. Those who live in the middle are disciples of the branch family within a few generations, while we, the direct descendants, live at the top. Di Xiaofeng saw that everyone seemed to be very curious about this situation and couldn't help but explain. Hearing this, everyone finally understood what was going on. There really is a huge difference between the upper realm and the lower realm. Shang Wannying couldn't help but sigh. When she was in the lower realm, she felt that their sect was also very grand. However, compared to the D clan, there was a huge difference. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have been able to imagine the shock of such a great aristocratic family. The upper realm has a lot more people and cultivation resources than the lower realm, so there will be some differences, Di Xiaofeng said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang fell silent. Based on their current understanding of the situation, the cultivators of the lower realm were undoubtedly the losers of the upper realm. Because they lost their competitiveness in the upper realm, they stayed in the lower realm. If possible, she hoped that her family could also come to the upper realm with her. Chapter 4572. She didn't want such a thing to happen. She didn't even want to accept that it was just a possibility. The reason why the lower realm cultivators could live so well was because the upper realm families all followed the rules. If there was a person who broke the rules one day, then everything would be gone. Di Xiaofeng obviously didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have thought of so many things in such a short time. However, he also welcomed Bailey Hongzhuang's family to the upper realm. The white jade stairs were very long. Even Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had to walk for a long time before they arrived at the residence of the D family's direct descendant. Standing at the top of the white jade stairs and looking down at the blue clouds, everyone couldn't help but feel that the mountains were small. Following behind Di Xiaofeng and the head elder, the D family's cultivators all bowed when they saw the two. Eldest young master, head elder. Di Xiaofeng and the head elder nodded slightly. All the cultivators who passed by all bowed. However, everyone was curiously looking at Di Beichun and the others. It was rare to see the eldest young master bring people back. Moreover, there were so many people in this area. Look, doesn't that white-robed man behind the eldest young master look a bit like the eldest young master? Yeah, I've never seen a man as handsome as the eldest young master. I didn't expect this man to not be inferior to the eldest young master at all. The woman beside that man is also a first-class beauty. I've seen many young ladies from other families before, but I've never seen such a beautiful young lady. I wonder which family she's from. Actually, that black-robed man is also very handsome. He's just a bit colder. The D family's cultivators couldn't help but whisper. They were all guessing the identity of the person who came. After all, the person who could be brought back by the eldest young master wouldn't be simple. However, at this critical moment, they didn't know what he came here for. When Xiren couldn't help but shake his head and sigh when he heard everyone's discussion. Normally, he was also very handsome. He didn't expect that after coming here, he would be completely ignored. Forget it, who told these guys to be too handsome? Xiron spread out his hands. It wasn't that he wasn't handsome enough, but that the guys beside him were too handsome. I finally understand why Wang Yanhan and the others didn't come. AI. Ao Ling Xiao couldn't help but sigh. The difference between people was too unfriendly. Second brother, sister-in-law, come with me. I believe that father and mother will be very happy to see you. The smile on Di Xiaofeng's face never dissipated. He really couldn't wait to bring Di Beichun and Di Beichun to his family. Di Beichun nodded slightly. Good. However, just as they were about to leave, a figure suddenly rushed past them. After noticing the first elder and Di Xiaofeng, he stopped in his tracks. Chapter 4573. As soon as he said this, everyone's expression changed. They already knew that Di Beichun's mother was seriously ill, but they didn't expect her condition to be so serious. Although Dr. Wu said it tactfully, they all understood that since he said it was not good and was so anxious, they were afraid that she couldn't hold on. Dr. Wu, I've already found my brother. I believe that after my mother sees my brother, she will be able to untie the knot in her heart. Di Xiaofeng quickly said. Hearing this, Dr. Wu was slightly stunned. His gaze fell on Di Beichun, and he quickly nodded. I didn't expect second young master to be back. I'm sure Madam will be very happy when she finds out. Then let's go quickly, Di Xiaofeng quickly said. At this moment, he didn't have time to tell the family head. His mother's illness was the most important thing. However, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said, Aunt's illness is indeed a heart disease, but it's already very serious. If Beichun suddenly appears, she might be too agitated and, long before this, she had already predicted that such a possibility would occur. Di Beichun was indeed the way to untie the knot in Lin Yunqing's heart, but she was already extremely weak. If she suddenly became too agitated, she might not be able to hold on. Hearing Di Xiaofeng's words, Dr. Wu also nodded. That's right. I was too anxious before and neglected this point. Madam's body is now extremely weak. If there's a sudden stimulation, she might not be able to take it. As he said this, Dr. Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. Miss, you've also studied medicine? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Di Xiaofeng said, Sister-in-law is the godly doctor I mentioned before. Sister-in-law, in your opinion, what should we do now? Don't go over for now. I will take a look at the situation first. The most important thing now is to let Madam calm down and have some confidence. When her condition is slightly better, Beichun will appear again. I believe the effect will be much better. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. She only knew a little about Madam's situation from everyone's narration. After all, she hadn't really checked, so she couldn't make a conclusion. Miss, Madam's current situation is actually very bad. Why don't we let second young master take a look? At the side, Dr. Wu couldn't help but remind her. He felt that Madam was already at the end of her rope. It just so happened that second young master had returned. If she didn't go now, she might not even be able to see him for the last time. Hearing this, everyone's heart sank again. They all understood what he meant. Di Beichun's pupil shrank. He didn't expect his mother's illness to be so serious. Wife, Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, his deep eyes filled with complex emotions. That was the mother he had never met before. Even though they had not seen each other all these years, she was still the mother he cared about the most. With just one call, Bailey Hongzhuang understood Di Beichun's thoughts. Beichun, don't worry. I will definitely find a way to cure Aunt. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was heavy and serious. Beichun finally came back to reunite with her. She definitely couldn't let anything happen to Aunt. She had studied medicine for so long, so that she would not have any regrets. Di Beichun nodded. Listen to my wife. We'll wait outside. Chapter 4574. Di Xiaofeng knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills weren't comparable to ordinary people. Moreover, his mother was also Bailey Hongzhuang's mother. She wouldn't mess around with this kind of thing. Thinking about it, since she did this, she must be confident. Where is Andy? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Dr. Wu and asked. Seeing that everyone agreed with Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Manager Wu sighed and didn't have any objections. Come with me. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Dr. Wu left quickly, Di Beiqian and the others didn't delay and also went to Lin Yunqing's residence. However, they didn't go in and chose to wait outside. Eldest young master, second young master, Madam's condition is so serious. I better go inform the patriarch first. Eldest said, although he didn't understand why eldest young master and second young master believe in Madam's medical skills so much, he felt that they had their reasons. However, Madam was really too young. Although the age of cultivators couldn't be completely judged from their appearance, he was still certain that Bailey Hongzhuang was only in her 20s. At this age, could she cure the illness that even Dr. Wu couldn't? Di Xiaofeng nodded. Go quickly. Di Beiqian, Xiaofeng, don't worry too much. Hongzhuang's medical skills have always been outstanding. I believe that as long as she makes a move, there won't be a problem. Shangguan Yingying comforted. Di Beiqian nodded slightly, but his dignified face showed that he still didn't feel relieved. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Hongzhuang's medical skills, but he was too worried about Lin Yunqing. The last time I saw Mother, her illness was already quite serious. I didn't expect it to reach this point. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were slightly red. Until now, he still didn't want to believe that his mother's illness was so serious. It will be fine, Di Beiqian said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang followed Dr. Wu into a courtyard. After entering the house, she found that the decoration here was very elegant, and the house exuded a bit of medicinal smell. Obviously, the people who lived here must have been taking drugs all year round. That was why the whole house was filled with such a smell. In his sight, a woman was lying on a bed. Without a doubt, she was an extremely beautiful woman. Her skin was fair and her features were picturesque. Even though her eyes were tightly shut at this moment, her brows were slightly furrowed. Even though she was unconscious, there was still a kind of sadness that could not be dispelled. Her delicate appearance made one's heart ache for her. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the beautiful woman in front of her and understood why Di Beiqian and Di Xiaofeng were so handsome. They had inherited her excellent genes. Lin Yunqing slowly opened her eyes as if she sensed someone coming. Right now, she was as thin as a match, and her hands were only skin and bones. However, her delicate beauty was emitted to the extreme, making it impossible for people to ignore her. Seeing the young woman before her, Lin Yunqing was astonished. However, she was even more astonished. What a beautiful girl! Her soft voice was like spring water, making people feel relaxed and happy. Greetings, madam. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly bowed. Dr. Wu, this girl is? Without waiting for Dr. Wu to answer, Bailey Hongzhuang answered herself. I am a friend that young Master Xiaofeng brought back. Hearing this, Lin Yunqing's gaze changed a bit. Then, her gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang became even gentler. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.